Chapter 794. Although Gu Yin wanted to stay with Tan Xiu for a while, she was still injured and reluctantly left. Tan Xiu directly handed over the task of training Qing Xueme to her and then stayed in the subaquatic corvette to cultivate quietly. In the blink of an eye, it was the third day since Tan Xiu and Qing Xueme arrived on this island. Tan Xiu had no idea that hundreds of nautical miles away from him, two liners were braving the wind and waves, sailing toward the direction of the Strait of Malacca. Tang Guosheng and the members of the Tang family's first and second guardian squads were on these two liners. The vast sea was surging with turbulent waves. On the leading liner, Tang Guosheng stood straight as a cold light flashed in his wise and far-sighted eyes. The bad news from Duanmu Lin was hard for him to accept. He even made up his mind to find his grandson, Tan Xiu, even if he had to blast open the underwater vestige. If his grandson was alive, he wanted to see him. If his grandson was dead, he wanted to see his corpse. Report! A loud and clear voice came from outside the door. Tang Min, who was behind Tang Guosheng, opened the door and saw the captain of the first guardian squad, Tang Rong, standing outside. She asked in a deep voice, "What's the matter?" "Through the binoculars, there's a fleet in front of us on the left," said Tang Rong. "Two cruisers, a destroyer, and a medium-sized liner. We can judge that it's F country's fleet based on the pattern printed on the hull." Tang Guosheng turned around and looked at Tang Rong, who was coming out of the door, and asked, "According to the information from Duanmu Lin, the F country's team that entered the three-star vestige was completely annihilated inside?" Tang Rong nodded silently. Tang Guosheng coldly snorted and said, "There's no need to contact them since all the F country's team members died inside. However, be vigilant. F country's people didn't get any benefits this time, so they're probably angry out of shame. Be careful not to provoke us." "I understand." Tang Rong nodded cautiously and turned to walk outside. Just as he took a few steps, a young man dashed over and reported in a deep voice, "Captain, the F Nation's liner has already left the fleet's route and is heading in our direction. Send the order to avoid that liner as much as possible." "Don't meet them," said Tang Rong in a deep voice. "If the other party pursues us relentlessly, then we'll make other plans." 20 minutes later, even though the two liners that the Tang family members were on had deviated from their course and were prepared to go around the other party still attempted to intercept the two liners. Therefore, Tang Guosheng personally came to the cockpit. Although he didn't want to get into trouble, but since trouble had come knocking on his door, he didn't want to avoid it again and again given his character. He said in a deep voice, "Send a signal to them and ask them what they want." After a while, Tang Rong said with a gloomy face, "Chief, they want us to stop sailing. They want us to be inspected." Killing intent burst out from Tang Guosheng's eyes as he said in an awe-inspiring tone, "This is international waters. What right does the F country's liner have to inspect us? Tell them to leave immediately, else it will be regarded as a provocation and they will be attacked by us." Tang Rong complied. After communicating with the other party, he finally determined that the other party didn't come with good intentions. Tang Guosheng was silent for a few seconds and then issued the order to stop the ship. As the other liner approached, Tang Guosheng appeared on the deck with more than a dozen people. Moreover, he clearly saw that a dozen people had also appeared in the cabin of the other party's liner. The strong man in the lead had a gloomy expression on his face, and there was a sheathed long saber hanging from his waist. The people around him also carried cold weapons, and almost all of them were long sabers and swords. Get ready to fight. Despite his old age, Tang Guosheng was, after all, a decisive person. He immediately issued the order upon seeing the weapons carried by the other party. Bush, 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 bush. Four figures shot out from the other liner. Their speed was extremely fast. The distance of 20 to 30 meters was like a sharp arrow. They didn't borrow any force in the air and directly dashed to the front of Tang Guosheng. At the moment when the four of them were in a defensive posture, the strong man in the lead leaped into the air and stood in front of the four in just 1 or 2 breaths. "Chinese?" The strong man snorted coldly and the killing intent in his eyes turned more intense. Tang Guosheng looked at the strong man as though he was facing a formidable enemy and said in a deep voice, "That's right. We're Chinese." But you people from the F country didn't get any benefits from the 3-star vestige, yet you actually came to us to cause trouble. You're just courting death. The strong man sneered and said, I didn't expect you to know about the 3-star vestige. It seems that your identity is not simple. Maybe those 4 Chinese guys who came out of the 3-star vestige are hiding in your 2-liners. Tang Guosheng sneered and said, Hide? Do you think our Chinese experts still need to hide? The strong man disdainfully said, Then what's the point of hiding if there's no need to hide? Tell them to come out and hand over the things they got from the 3-star vestige and I'll leave your corpses intact. Otherwise, don't blame me for being cruel and merciless and killing everyone on these 2-liners. Just you? Tang Rong strode a few steps forward in an instant and fiercely punched the strong man. He was an elite expert cultivated by the Tang family since childhood. He had broken through to the martial arts grandmaster realm at the age of 35 and then retired from the army. After 12 years of cultivation, he reached the peak of the martial arts grandmaster realm half a year ago. Later on, he was sent to the Everlasting Feast Hall to undergo rigorous training and cultivation before he finally broke through and reached a higher level. At present, he was not inferior to a mid-stage qi refining expert. A look of surprise appeared in the burly man's eyes. A ball of flame instantly formed between his raised hands, and then he pushed it forward forcefully, colliding with Tang Rong's fist. Boom! Tang Rong's expression changed drastically. As his fist collided with the flames, the high temperature instantly turned his fist red. The 2 fire snakes broke free from the flames and bombarded his chest along his arm. It was just one hit. Tang Rong, who was comparable to a mid-stage qi refining expert, was sent flying and seriously injured. The strong man didn't follow up with another attack. Instead, he mocked with an arrogant expression, You want to fight me with such little power? You're simply overestimating yourself. I've warned you to hand over everything you got from the 3-star vestige, else I don't mind killing you all. Tang Guosheng's expression changed drastically. He never dreamed that the strong man in front of him turned out to be an ability user and a terrifying one at that. The experts he brought this time were the top armed forces of the Tang family, and Tang Rong was ranked first among them. However, how could Tang Rong be defeated so easily? Moreover, he was seriously injured? At this moment, Tang Guosheng faintly felt bitter in his mouth. What kind of status did he have? Aside from that Amur tiger from before, when had he ever been forced by others? Dead. Tang Min appeared near Tang Guosheng with 2 men and 2 women. With a bit of worry on her face, she first propped Tang Rong up and then looked at Tang Guosheng. Tang Guosheng took a deep breath and ignored Tang Min. Instead, he stared at the strong man and said, You're indeed very strong, but are these people you brought as strong as you? The number of experts on our 2-liners is definitely not less than yours. Are you sure you'll still have a lot of people left after you kill us all? The strong man sneered and said, With just you? You think you can make us suffer heavy losses? Ha! Since when did you Chinese learn how to be an alarmist? Alarmist? Tang Guosheng indifferently replied. Just give the order if you think I'm just being an alarmist. This is the depths of the sea, so it's very easy to destroy the corpses here. I want to see if we'll all be killed or if you and your men will die here. The strong man hesitated. Although he was very confident in his men, the enemy who just attacked him was not a weakling. At the very least, there were no more than 3 people among his men who were stronger than him. It would be impossible for him to kill these people easily if there were more people among these Huaxia people who could be comparable to the man just now. I don't want to kill anyone. I just want the things your Huaxia people got from the 3-star vestige. Hand them over and we'll leave immediately. Don't say that you've got the wrong people. I won't give them to you even if we really have them, said Tang Guosheng in a deep voice. The strong man was silent for a moment and slowly said, If that's the case, then I'll take a step back. Whatever you get, we can split equally. If it's scientific knowledge, we can share it. This is the bottom line I can bear, old geezer. Don't challenge my bottom line. Are you sure that the things in the 3-star vestige are with us? Asked Tang Guosheng. Yeah, said the strong man bluntly. Tang Guosheng took a deep breath and retreated a few steps back. Then he fiercely shouted, Heed my order, everyone. Immediately fight back if these guys dare to attack us. We don't plan to go out alive this time, so we must drag them to the underworld with us even if we die in battle. Affirmative. Dozens of members of the Tang family's first and second guardian squads appeared from the cabin. The total number of the two squads was 62 people, and there were still 61 people who could fight. Tang Guoxing knew that the 2 men and 2 women brought by Tang Min were also very powerful. They were experts sent by Tan Xiu to protect the Tang family. Fucking old geezer. The strong man cursed and raised his hands. 2 fire dragons instantly formed in front of his fingers. He took a step forward and waved his arms. The 2 fire dragons bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they pounced towards Tang Guoxing. Chapter 795. Tang Guoxing's complexion changed, while Tang Min looked horrified. She quickly blocked in front of Tang Guoxing and shouted, "Kill them!" In an instant. Of the 2 men and 2 women who had been standing behind Tang Min, one of the women instantly appeared in front of Tang Min. As a terrifying aura was released from her body, the long sword on her back instantly flew out of its scabbard. The moment she grabbed the sword in her hand, layers of sword shadows sprinkled out. A gust of wind instantly surged. The water splashed from both sides of the liner. The billowing airwaves were accompanied by layers of overlapping sword images as they swept over the 2 fire dragons in an instant. The stalwart man only felt darkness in front of him as the 2 fire dragons were bombarded and smashed into pieces, sparks splashing everywhere. The oncoming sword images made his pupils shrink, and he fiercely pushed forward with both hands. Firewall. Like a spider web, layers of densely packed flame lines quickly condensed and eventually formed a thick firewall. The billowing flames were continuously injected into the firewall and then pressed toward the sword images in front. Boom! The stalwart man's body trembled and he instantly retreated. The moment the 2 streams of fire formed on the sea surface, his body flew back to their liner. At the same time, the 4 F-country paranormals who were originally behind him started to use their abilities. A whistling tornado was formed, and numerous water arrows were shot out. The 2 types of abilities complemented each other, and their speed was pushed to the limit. At the moment when the firewall was broken, they fiercely rushed forward. Arg! The 4 people were sent flying by the billowing airwaves. As they were flying upside down, a wind elementalist on the liner behind them released several wind belts and finally rolled them back to the liner's deck. The middle-aged woman who waved the long sword retreated 3 steps back and then stabilized her figure. Her sharp eyes stared at the stalwart man and sneered, "You're just a trifling ability user, yet you dare to come out and rob us? Are you F-country people so arrogant?" The stalwart man's expression turned a bit ugly. He also stared at the middle-aged woman and shouted in a deep voice, "Who the hell are you? Also, how can the power you just used be so strong?" The middle-aged woman sneered and couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. She nodded at the astonished Tang Min and returned behind her. "Are the 4 of you about the same strength?" asked Tang Min hurriedly. The middle-aged woman replied, "More or less." "If the 4 of you take action, can you kill the leader?" asked Tang Min again. The middle-aged woman nodded and said, "If it were me, it would have taken me quite a bit of effort to kill him, and even the whole liner would have been destroyed. If the 2 of us join forces, it will be enough to kill him. As for the 4 of us working together, he won't be able to leave the sea region even if he has 2 lives. Then what are we waiting for?" Tang Min excitedly asked. "Go and kill them now. The F nation really deserves to die." "Don't attack yet," Tang Guoxing quickly said. "The other party has quite a number of people and their strength is not to be underestimated. I'll have them retreat first. If they don't retreat, it won't be too late to make a move then." He was shocked by the strength of the middle-aged woman sent by his grandson, Tang Xiuxiu, to the Tang family. Recalling how he had once ignored these people, Tang Guoxing instantly recalled his grandson's words that all the core members of the Everlasting Feast Hall were cultivators. At this moment, he looked at the ability users on the opposite liner and no longer had any fear in his heart. He held his head high and chest out as he looked at the big man and shouted in a deep voice, "This is the last warning. Retreat quickly, else your threat to me will come true." Although the big man was a bit startled, he wasn't scared at all. He even had a trump card up his sleeve. Therefore, he let out a wild and unruly laugh and said, "Relying on a woman? Just like scaring us away? You old geezer, your head must have been kicked by a donkey. Plenty, it's all up to you now." "No problem." A woman with an enchanting figure and revealing attire swayed her willow-slender waist as she took a few steps forward. Along with a series of tender laughter, a drizzle suddenly fell from the sky. Behind her, 6 men and women in dark blue attire, holding various utensils in their hands, rose into the air at the same time. The already turbulent sea around the liner they were on suddenly became unbearably violent under the same strength of the sea breeze. As waves exploded, pillars of water suddenly shot up into the sky. A total of 72 pillars of water rapidly rotated and absorbed the misty drizzle around them. "Be careful, don't overturn the liner." Tang Min stood on the deck, but her body swayed a few times. In a flash, the 4 men and women with swords on their backs behind her were like cannonballs that blasted out and instantly appeared on the opposite liner. As the 4 swords rotated and crisscrossed, they instantly arranged the 4 symbols sword array. A terrifying aura burst out from the 4 symbols sword array, causing the thicker water columns in the surroundings to faintly distort. Flowing light, sword shadow. The overwhelming sword beams whizzed and rushed toward the opposite liner, while the figures of the 4 people behind the sword beams stirred the surrounding void and turned it incomparably dark. As the water columns seemed to come to life and rush toward them, the sword beams crazily stirred and turned the sea area into a terrifying space of torrential rain. 10,000 meters away, a freighter was floating on the sea with 2 men and women in black tuxedos standing on the top of the freighter. The man was tall and handsome, while the woman was incomparably beautiful. They looked at the distant sea as if they could see through the void and see the battle scene tens of thousands of meters away. "Dorit, if my guess is correct, those 4 people should be the legendary cultivators of Huaxia, right? Because only they can burst out such a powerful combat power." The beautiful woman smiled and stroked her hair with her slender jade-like hands, exuding the charm of a mature woman. "They're indeed cultivators of Huaxia." Dorit snorted coldly. "I once met a brat who was much stronger than them. But that brat was too insolent and was eventually killed by my master and his senior brother. If I had my current strength, my master wouldn't have passed away due to his heavy injuries. Your master was a very powerful ability user of our M country. He also participated in the Crusades." The beautiful woman shook her head and said, "Even the current you is inferior to him in the past. Even he passed away due to serious injuries, let alone you. However, those F country's ability users do have some ability. I know that Shui Duo. I've fought her before, and she was defeated by me. The 6 people behind her are all water attribute ability users. Their joint attack will cause their power to increase by more than 10 times. Tell me, who will be the winner of this showdown, or the F country's ability users?" "No matter who is stronger or weaker, they won't be the final winner," said Dorit apathetically. "F country's people didn't get anything from the 3-star vestige, but the Chinese people got too many benefits. We can't do anything to them in Haiben Island, but here, we must get the things in the 3-star vestige." The beautiful woman let out a faint smile and said, "You'll have to pay the price if you want me to act." "I know what you want," snorted Dorit coldly. "I'll give you that water crystal. If you're still not satisfied, I'll personally find someone to help you craft a water staff after we go back." The beautiful woman's eyes lit up and she said without hesitation, "Deal." On the other side, 4 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall unleashed their full strength. Even though Shui Duo and the other water attribute ability users had joined forces, the 4 symbol sword array still broke their formation. Even the F country's liner was split by the violent sword array, leaving dozens of cracks on it. The entire liner was about to be destroyed. "Attack! Seize their liner!" The strong man shouted angrily and rushed toward the 4 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall without hesitation. The other dozens of ability users also soared into the air and unleashed their own abilities to launch a fierce attack on the Tang family's people. People kept dying in the brutal battle. However, Both sides tried their best to avoid causing harm to the liner as much as possible. It was because they were perfectly aware that no matter who would survive, they would need to take the liner to leave. On Huang Island, hundreds of nautical miles away, Tan Xiu quietly sat cross-legged on a reef, continuously absorbing the star force from space. His star's tyrannical body had become more profound as he diligently cultivated. Now, he only needed the last 2 layers to reach the perfect state. Kacha, kacha. The robot bee flashed its metal wings and landed in front of Tan Xiu. Its claws grabbed the stones on the ground and finally shot out a virtual hologram. Tan Xiu opened his eyes and saw the scene displayed on the hologram. His expression greatly changed. As his fingers slid on the hologram, a series of strange symbols finally appeared. These symbols were the numbers of the Bowles-Dearth galaxy. These numbers showed the exact distance from the virtual hologram. You too, come back. Tan Xiu's figure soared into the sky and shouted at Gu Xiaoxue and Qing Xueme 2,000 meters away. After a while, 2 figures sprinted over. Qing Xueme, who had removed the gravity suit, was now able to control part of her power. Although her speed was much slower than Gu Xiaoxue, she was already very satisfied. Did you call us, Grandmaster? Asked Gu Xiaoxue. Tan Xiu instantly rushed toward the deep-sea corvette on the shore, but his voice stayed behind. Return to the deep-sea corvette immediately. Our people are under attack hundreds of nautical miles away. We must rescue them immediately. Our people? Gu Xiaoxue's expression shifted. Her figure flashed and instantly appeared next to Qing Xueme. Her lily-white hands grabbed Qing Xueme's collar and sprinted inside the deep-sea corvette with her. Grandmaster, who are the people we are going to rescue? Asked Gu Xiaoxue quickly after appearing next to Tan Xiu. Chapter 796. With a gloomy expression, Tan Xiu quickly typed on the virtual keyboard in front of the subaquatic corvette's control panel. As the subaquatic corvette sailed for a kilometer and sank to the bottom of the sea, it suddenly increased its power and bolted toward the several liners hundreds of nautical miles away. It only took a few minutes for the subaquatic corvette to arrive hundreds of nautical miles away. But in these few minutes, the fighting on the liners became more and more intense. The ability users of F country were faintly gaining the upper hand under the eruption of various abilities. Fuck off. The stalwart man's situation was different. Although his subordinates had killed or severely injured more than a dozen members of the Tang family's 1st and 2nd Guard squads, he was besieged by 2 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall and was in danger of being seriously injured or killed at any time. Tang Guisheng and Tang Min were protected by the other 2 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall and didn't suffer any injuries. Yet, they could only watch their family's most elite experts being killed or seriously injured, and their hearts sank. 10,000 meters away. On the top of the freighter where F country's ability users were riding, Dorit's hands were crossed behind his back. His eyes gleamed as he watched the Tang family's people gradually falling into a disadvantageous position. He slowly nodded and said, F country's ability users are quite powerful. They used a lot of resources to train these ability users in the past, and it seems that the result is quite remarkable. China may have 4 experts, but 2 of them don't dare to act rashly since they have to protect others. If the battle goes on like this, it won't take long for most of China's experts to be killed, and the remaining ones will be seriously injured. However, F country's ability users won't have it easy either, and the final result will be a lose-lose situation for both sides. The woman giggled and said, Kill them. The fiercer they fight, the easier it will be for us to act. There's an old saying in China that when the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. We should be the fishermen, right? Dorit glanced at the woman and lightly said, I didn't expect you to have such a deep understanding of China's culture recently. What's wrong? Do you want to organize an Eastern punitive expedition? The woman rolled her eyes and angrily said, I'm not tired of living. Why would I organize an Eastern punitive expedition? Furthermore, now is not the time for adepts to stand at the peak of humanity. Ordinary firearms are no threat to us, but what about more powerful weapons? Especially, the secret weapon of each country, the laser gun. Dorit's expression turned a lot more solemn as he nodded and said, Countries are exploring and developing all kinds of relics, and the scientific and technological power they control is getting stronger and stronger. The laser guns with high firing speed, long range, and terrifying power have become the secret weapons of various countries. They are indeed able to threaten us. The beautiful woman didn't think as much as Dorrit. She gazed into the distance and said, "Don't let your imagination run wild. Let's just wait for both sides to suffer. Maybe there are treasures in the 3-star vestige that are beneficial to us ability users. I don't mind sharing some with you if I really have them," said Dorrit in a deep voice. "But if you don't, we can't change the terms we agreed on before." "Okay." In the vast sea, aside from the cruel slaughter on the ships and the constant appearance of various strange phenomena, the distant sea was much calmer. However, no one was aware that the subaquatic corvette had already appeared below the liner. Inside the cabin, Tan Xiu quickly entered a series of commands on the virtual keyboard. He then looked at Qing Xueme and said, "You stay here. Xiao Xue and I will participate in the rescue operation. Remember, don't mess with the control equipment inside the subaquatic corvette. The optical computer has been bound to my fingerprint and retina. No one else can control it except me, else they will be attacked by the hidden weapons in the cockpit." "How about I join the rescue operation?" Qing Xueme nodded. Tan Xiu interrupted her and walked toward the cabin door while saying in a deep voice, "You still have a mission to complete, so you can't appear in front of others for the time being. Also, you can't even fully control your own power now. Not only will you not be of help to us, but you will also become a burden to us instead. Just stay here and behave yourself." Qing Xueme was a bit embarrassed, but she still nodded silently. She knew that what Tan Xiu said was the truth. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to help them with her current ability and might even become a burden to them. The subaquatic corvette's cabin door opened and a layer of energy shield popped out half a meter to block the great pressure of the seawater. As Tan Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue rushed out of the energy shield, the cabin door automatically closed. Under the pitch-black water, Tan Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue withstood the huge seawater pressure and quickly rushed to the surface. "Kill the 4 of them." On the deck of the liner, 3 water ability users were controlling the surging water dungeon to trap the 4 members of the Tang family's second guardian squad inside. Even as the seawater solidified, ice arrows easily penetrated the water dungeon and shot toward the 4 people inside. Among the 4, a member of the second guardian squad clutched his bloody left arm. Blue veins bulged on his forehead and his eyes were full of killing intent, yet he had no way to rush out of the water dungeon. While the other 3 people dodged the ice arrows, they also had to take out their hands to help him block the ice arrows. "Don't worry about me. You guys find a way to kill your way out." The member shouted loudly. Puff! Just as his voice fell, an ice arrow shot through the abdomen of a middle-aged man who was protecting him. As blood splashed, the middle-aged man flew several meters away and fell heavily. In an instant, the 4 people all felt a strong sense of powerlessness in their hearts. They knew very well that with their strength, it was almost impossible to break out of the water dungeon. But if they couldn't break out, they would have to face the enemy's continuous attacks, and they couldn't launch any counterattack. A lightning-fast figure rose from the sea near the edge of the liner. With a flash of a bright sword light, the 3F country water ability users were cut in half at the waist without them noticing. Tan Xiu's long sword danced around him. After killing the 3 ability users in an instant, he didn't stop at all. His lightning-fast figure once again appeared near the other 2 people. Die. Although the 2 ability users had discovered Tan Xiu ahead of time, they were only able to hastily set up defensive measures. Yet, they were still split into dozens of pieces in the face of the violent sword light. On the other side, the moment Gu Xiaoxue emerged from the sea, the water on her body instantly evaporated. As her white dress fluttered, layers of sword shadows resembled the Milky Way from the 9th heaven, engulfing the 2F country metahumans in an instant. As blood and flesh splattered all over the sky, she directly penetrated through the blood mist and landed a seemingly light punch on the back of one of the F country metahumans. "Everyone, be careful." Besieged by the 2 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall, the strong man was on the verge of collapse. The moment he saw the sudden appearance of two killing gods, his heart suddenly fell into an ice cave. At the cabin door of the liner, Tang Guisheng and Tang Min, who were protected by the other two experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall, looked ecstatic when they saw the figure of the newcomer. In particular, Tang Guisheng found that the powerhouse who suddenly appeared turned out to be his grandson, Tan Xiu. The worry inside his heart instantly dissipated without a trace. "Kill these bastards, Xiu." Tang Xiu flashed a smile at Tang Guisheng as his figure constantly flickered. Every time he attacked, an ability user was either killed or severely injured. Tang Guisheng suddenly said, "You two don't need to protect us anymore. Join forces with Xiu and kill these F-country ability users as soon as possible." The two experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall glanced at each other and tacitly nodded. They then quickly rushed toward the nearest F-country ability users. All of them were powerful individuals who had survived through a sea of blood and mountains of corpses. Their combat experience was extremely rich. That was why when they were fighting with the F-nation's metahumans, they were still vigilantly paying attention to their surroundings. If any metahumans tried to attack Tang Guisheng and Tang Min, they would immediately withdraw from the battle and stop them. Originally, due to the sudden appearance of Tan Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue, the Tang family's members were in a disadvantageous position. But this time, it was the F-country's ability users who were unable to fight back. Finally, the F-country's stalwart man realized that it was impossible for him to win. Hence, he went all out to force the two Everlasting Feast Hall's experts to retreat. Paying the price of 2 bloody wounds, he rushed toward the other side of the liner where the speedboat was hanging. "Wanna leave? Dream on." The two men simultaneously bombarded the sword hilt with their palms. The two swords were as fast as meteors and pierced the stalwart man's back in the blink of an eye. Puff! The stalwart man was in despair. He could feel his heart getting pierced as his life force rapidly drained away. He regretted it. Because of his greed, he wanted to snatch the treasures obtained by the Chinese members in the 3-star vestige. Hence, he finally ended up dying tragically here. Run! A water elementalist's complexion paled. He could only watch helplessly as his leader was killed. He no longer had the slightest desire to fight. After shouting, he instantly fled to the distance and dashed into the water when the Tang family's experts couldn't pursue him. The remaining 20 metahumans from F-country had looks of despair on their faces. Their ability was not to control water, so it was very difficult for them to survive in the vast sea. Puff, puff, puff. Since they had lost the will to continue fighting, except for nearly 10 ability users who jumped into the sea in an attempt to escape as fast as possible, the rest were all slaughtered in just half a minute. At this moment, the decks of the two liners were dyed red with blood and many corpses were scattered all over the place, looking very miserable. Tan Xiu quickly came to Tang Guisheng's front and asked, "Grandpa, why are you here?" Tang Guisheng was in a very good mood at the moment. Although the Tang family had lost a lot of elite experts, his grandson was safe and sound, making him feel a lot more relaxed. "Isn't it because of you?" Chapter 797. Tan Xiu finally learned the whole story through his explanation. He didn't blame Duan Mulin for misinforming him. After all, anyone who couldn't come out of the relic after it was closed would think that they were trapped or dead inside. On the contrary, although he looked calm on the surface, he was actually very touched inwardly. His grandfather, Tang Guisheng, the head of the Tang family, actually rushed here with a large number of experts of the Tang family with great fanfare and almost lost his life in the vast sea. That warm current flowed through his limbs and bones, warming his 3 souls and 7 spirits, making him feel extremely comfortable. "You should believe in my ability, Grandpa. I dare not boast about other things, but the number of people on Earth who can kill me can be counted on one hand." Tang Guisheng glared at him. Despite his smiling eyes, he still reprimanded him. "Being too conceited is easy to fail miserably. I know you're a powerful cultivator, but even a tiger needs to take a nap. Who doesn't have a chance? This old man came all the way here, yet you're blaming me?" Tan Xiu blushed with shame and smiled embarrassedly. "How could I dare to blame you? But Auntie just said that you left the entire Tang family behind and rushed here with your people. If something happens to you because of me, I won't be able to rest easy. Tang Guosheng nodded with satisfaction and said, "Don't worry. It's fine even if I didn't inform the rest of the family. Even if something happens to me, your first uncle can now shoulder the Tang family's pillar. With your second grandpa and third grandpa's assistance, it won't be a problem. Besides, I just heard a rumor recently that has a deep relationship with you." "What rumor?" asked Tan Xiu in surprise. "I heard that you have a very powerful disciple," said Tang Guosheng meaningfully. "Even Duanmu Lin can't lift his head?" Tan Xiu stared blankly and asked with a confused expression, "I do have a very powerful disciple, but what happened between her and Duanmu Lin? I don't know." At the side, Gu Xiaoxue lightly coughed and smilingly said, "Grand Master, and I met some people from China's Special Abilities Bureau on the way to the Strait of Malacca. Duanmu Lin is among them. Master used some of her abilities to intimidate those people." Tan Xiu was stunned, then quickly asked, "Yen'er didn't mention my name, did she?" Gu Xiaoxue said with a smile, "Master naturally mentioned you. Otherwise, how can we figure out your specific situation?" Tan Xiu felt helpless inside. He didn't want to expose his relationship with the Everlasting Feast Hall, but Gu Yen'er's actions had exposed the relationship he had been trying to hide. At this time, even those big shots in the country would know about his relationship with the Everlasting Feast Hall. Sighing inwardly, Tan Xiu asked, "You said that Yen'er used some power? You managed to intimidate the people from China's Special Abilities Bureau?" Gu Xiaoxue gently nodded and said, "You know how strong Master is, Grand Master. That bit of ability is too powerful for her in the eyes of outsiders." Tan Xiu nodded in response. Since Gu Yen'er had shown her muscles and intimidated the people from China's Special Abilities Bureau, then they should know that he wasn't someone to be trifled with. It didn't matter even if they were vigilant against him and the Tang family in the future. In any case, he didn't want to seize the position of the country's ruler by force. If the power Yen'er has shown is really strong to the point that even Duanmu Lin feels powerless against her, I'm afraid that many big shots will be afraid of me. Thinking about it from another perspective, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'll have to deal with some people if I want to develop myself in the future. It's enough if they don't dare to do anything to me, the magnificent Tang Corporation, the Everlasting Feast Hall, and even the Tang family." As he thought up to there, a smile appeared on Tan Xiu's face. He looked at Tang Guosheng and asked, "Grandpa, is this the rumor you heard?" Tang Guosheng shook his head and smilingly said, "It's more than that. As the leader of the Special Abilities Bureau, Duanmu Lin personally issued an order that no one should provoke him in the future. Neither the Everlasting Feast Hall, the Tang family, nor the magnificent Tang Corporation. Now, the top family heads of the imperial capital have all received the news." Tan Xiu smiled strangely. It seemed that his precious disciple had scared Duanmu Lin quite a bit. For the dignified head of the Special Abilities Bureau to issue such an order, it meant that he could do whatever he wanted in the country in the future. Suddenly, Tang Min, who was sitting next to him, asked, "Xiu, according to the news from Haiban Island, all the passageways leading to the 3-star vestige are closed, and you haven't come out yet. The 3-star relic was located in the depths of the Strait of Malacca. Without a submarine, no one would be able to withstand the pressure of the deep sea. But you came out. How did you do it?" A smile outlined on the corner of Tang Xiu's mouth as he smilingly said, "Auntie, since you're curious, then I'll take you to a place. Also, I have some good news to tell you." "Where are we going?" asked Tang Min. "Just follow me," said Tan Xiu with a smile. A few minutes later, Tan Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue took Tang Guosheng and Tang Min to the liner's deck. Tan Xiu grabbed Tang Guosheng and Tang Min's arms as a surging airflow instantly wrapped them and then jumped into the sea. They descended for more than 10 meters. The subaquatic corvette appeared in front of the quartet. As Tan Xiu inputted a series of commands outside the cabin door, the airflow pushed the seawater outside the cabin door half a meter away. Tan Xiu then quickly entered with Tang Guosheng and Tang Min. "Heavens! This place is?" Tang Min's eyes widened to the size of a copper bell, and her eyes flickered with shock. Tang Guosheng was a bit better than her, but he was also shocked. The facilities inside the subaquatic corvette, as well as the technology that far surpassed today's level, made their hearts beat faster. This is the subaquatic corvette I got from the 3-star base I established in the Star Luo Empire, said Tan Xiu with a smile. We were able to leave the 3-star vestige smoothly and deceive everyone's eyes because of it. Cheng Xueme, let me introduce you. This is my grandpa and this is my auntie. At this moment, Cheng Xueme came out of the cabin and was slightly surprised to see Tang Guoxing and Tang Min. She immediately looked shocked after hearing Tan Xiu's introduction. She had seen Tang Guoxing and Tang Min on TV countless times and knew that they were the Tang family's patriarch and his daughter, Grandpa Tang, Auntie Tang. Cheng Xueme suppressed the shock inside and greeted with a bit of respect. Tang Guoxing was surprised to see Cheng Xueme, but he didn't show it and just nodded with a smile. Tang Min, on the other hand, looked suspicious and asked, "You're Cheng Xueme? Why do you look so familiar?" "I once met you with my mother," said Cheng Xueme. "Who is your mother?" asked Tang Min, confused. Cheng Xueme didn't reply. She didn't want to recall her parents' matter, much less mention it in front of others. Even though she knew that her mother and Tang Min had been close friends since they were young, she knew that her mother had grown up with Tang Min. Tan Xiu knew something about Cheng Xueme. Sensing that she didn't want to mention her mother, he immediately said, "Auntie, I still have something important to tell you. This is also the main reason why I brought you here." "What is it?" asked Tang Min with a slight frown. "Before I tell you, you must promise me that you must not tell anyone except the core members of the Tang family," said Tan Xiu. Tang Guoxing realized that what Tan Xiu said should be very important, so he straightforwardly said, "With your words, we know what to say and what not to say." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "I've taken control of the entire 3-star vestige, so I'm now the owner of the 3-star vestige. I can enter it at any time if I want to. Naturally, I can also use everything inside." "What did you say?" Tang Guoxing was aghast and exclaimed with disbelief on his old face. Tan Xiu repeated what he just said and finally said, "I'm telling the truth. The 3-star vestige was left behind by the Star Luo Empire in the Black Cloud Star Field's Posdot Galaxy. To be precise, it was the Star Luo Empire's fleets that fled and eventually fled to Earth. They hurriedly built a seabed base, but they eventually perished due to the sudden change in Earth's environment and climate." "What sudden change in climate and environment?" asked Tang Guoxing hurriedly. "Tectonic movements, volcanic eruptions, and the extinction of all living things," answered Tan Xiu. Tang Guoxing fell into silence. Earth had experienced countless natural disasters, and this was the knowledge that scientists had tried their best to explore. It was just that he didn't expect that the extraterrestrial races would suffer such a devastating blow. "What exactly is inside the 3-star vestige, Xiu? What's in it for us?" Tang Min asked the question she wanted to know the most. "Our Tang family can rely on that 3-star vestige to dominate the world if we want to do so," said Tan Xiu. "It has technology and weapons that far surpass Earth's. Shortly put, all the necessities for a race to survive are all there." Tang Guoxing was shaken and didn't speak for a long time. Tang Min frowned deeply and stared at Tan Xiu's face, asking, "Do you want to dominate Earth, Xiu?" "I'm not interested." Tan Xiu shook his head. "If I want to dominate Earth, I can do it as long as I have some time even without that 3-star vestige. In my opinion, cultivation is the most important thing now." "Then, how do you plan to solve the problem of the 3-star vestige?" asked Tang Min. Tan Xiu looked at Tang Guoxing and seriously said, "I think we shouldn't announce the 3-star vestige to the public for the time being. However, I brought out a lot of good things from it. If the country is willing to exchange some things, we can exchange some of the simplest technologies." Chapter 798. Tang Guoxing very much approved of Tan Xiu's suggestion. Although his grandson, Tan Xiu, now controlled the entire 3-star vestige, everyone knew that a man who is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Even for the higher-ups of China, who could guarantee that they could obtain powerful scientific and technological power and arm a powerful army to break the current world structure and become the world's overlord. "What do you need the most now, Xiu?" Tang Guoxing knew that his grandson was a cultivator, so he began to calculate the benefits for his grandson in his heart. Tan Xiu pondered for a moment and slowly said, I need time. Tang Guosheng stared blankly and asked in confusion, how long? At least 10 years or more, said Tan Xiu. The cultivation resources on Earth are really limited nowadays, and my cultivation speed is too slow. Grandpa, as long as I have enough time, no matter how the world structure changes in the future, it won't be a threat to me or even our Tang family. Tang Guosheng nodded silently. He felt that the 10 years that his grandson said was too little. If he wanted to cultivate to the level of a true expert, time was far from enough. For example, the Amur tiger in the northeast. He was 200 years old, but how much cultivation did he have? Then let's think about it and see what we can offer. We can make our country stronger and stronger, but we can't make it too strong in a short time. All right. Afterward, the grandfather and grandson began to discuss. Tan Xiu took out a lot of things from his interspatial ring. After their research, they finally determined a few things. Apart from the subaquatic corvette they were currently riding, there was only a producer for daily necessities and a few energy crystals. The subaquatic corvette we're riding now has more than a dozen weapon configurations inside, and the most powerful one is the subaquatic laser cannon. It can even blast a small island. Hence, I'm going to dismantle the main cannon and leave some other less powerful weapon systems. I believe that once the higher-ups of China get their hands on this subaquatic corvette, they won't be able to achieve much in 3 to 5 years. After 8 or 10 years, even if their research is thorough and they can use the scientific and technological results to manufacture a large number of subaquatic corvettes, we don't have to worry about it anymore. At the end of the discussion, Tan Xiu said slowly. Tang Guosheng nodded with satisfaction and smilingly said, if you ask me, I'm afraid the higher-ups of China will be grinning from ear to ear even if most of the weapons on this subaquatic corvette are dismantled and handed over to them. Why can't our country become the world's hegemon? No way to become number one in military affairs? Isn't it because their weapons are too weak? Tan Xiu said with a smile, since we are Chinese, we must make our country's weapons more powerful and make our country's armed forces the most powerful. I hope the higher-ups of our country don't have any ambitious people. Although he said so, he was sure that once Hua Xia's military power reached the top in the world, even surpassing America by a large margin, the country's bigwigs would definitely implement some plans. At the very least, it would cause some changes to the current world structure. Hua Xia was like a sleeping lion that got stronger and stronger after awakening and could now reach the world's first-class standard. However, a lion was a lion. Even though the lion had been staying in its territory peacefully for the past few decades, when it possessed the greatest strength, it would definitely want to step into the vast territory of the forest. Tan Xiu wanted his country to become stronger and stronger, but he needed more time to make his strength and influence stronger. Otherwise, this planet would be destroyed before he could ascend to the heavens in the future. Knock knock. The door was knocked. Cheng Xueme, who didn't participate in the discussion, pushed the door and entered. She looked at Tan Xiu and quickly said, the virtual image of the detector just showed that some people are approaching us. If my guess is correct, they should be people from America. Tan Xiu and Tang Guosheng exchanged glances and looked surprised. Tang Min, on the other hand, was puzzled and asked, someone from Team M? They're approaching us? Are they the same as those ability users from France? They also want to snatch the treasures obtained from the 3-star vestige from us? Tang Guosheng nodded thoughtfully and said, that should be the case. America has always regarded themselves as the world's top dog, yet all the powerhouses sent by their country were annihilated in the 3-star vestige. It's impossible for them to get more benefits from the 3-star vestige. My guess is that they set their sights on the people from various countries who obtained the treasures in the vestige. Let's go to the steering cabin and have a look, said Tan Xiu. Shortly after, all 5 of them went to the steering cabin and watched the scene displayed on the virtual screen. A cold light flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes. It was because there were dozens of experts on the cargo ships sent by America. They were obviously not ordinary people, and it was obvious that they were up to no good when they looked at the 2 liners above. These people from America are really arrogant just because they are strong and have advanced weapons, said Tang Guosheng coldly. Do you see the man on the top of the cargo ship? His name is Dorit, the leader of the Golden Shield Special Ability Bureau of America. His position is the same as Duanmu Lin of Huaxia, but his authority is higher. How did you know that, Dad? Asked Tang Min, confused. I used to work in the Confidential Archives Department, so I naturally know some special intelligence files, said Tang Guosheng. There are records about this Dorrit in there. Only, there aren't many records about him. Why didn't you recognize the identity of the F country's ability users we met before? Asked Tang Min curiously. F country's ability users are very low-key. Tang Guosheng shook his head and said, I only know that they have established a special ability bureau, but I don't know who's in charge, how many ability users they have, and how powerful they are. Further, F country's aggressiveness is not as strong as the M country, so we mostly pay attention to the M country's intelligence. Tang Min suddenly understood and looked at Tan Xiao, asking, How are we going to deal with them, Xiao? Tan Xiao was silent for a moment and slowly said, If Grandpa hates them, we can wipe them out without any casualties. Tang Guosheng stared blankly and asked with a puzzled expression, Casualties are unavoidable if we fight them, no? Those M country people are not paper tigers. Don't you think your tone is too big, Xiao? A smile outlined on the corner of Tan Xiao's mouth. His hands quickly tapped on the virtual keyboard and a series of commands were set by him. At the same time, all the muzzles on the 20-meter-long subaquatic corvette began to adjust their positions, while the weapon propulsion furnace operated at full speed. 6 kilometers away, the cargo ship on the vast sea was slowly approaching the 2 liners that had stopped sailing. Dorrit, who was on the top of the cargo ship, looked hesitant and his fingers kept stroking his chin. As for the beautiful woman standing beside him, the smile on her face had already disappeared without a trace and was replaced by a solemn expression. You must think about it clearly, Dorrit. On the 2 Chinese liners, there were originally 4 very strong experts. Later on, 2 even stronger experts came. With the strength of the 6 of them, they can completely suppress us. We'll be the ones to be annihilated if we fight, said the beautiful woman with a cold voice. Dorrit turned to look at the beautiful woman. He took a deep breath and said, I know the enemy is very strong. I can't even deal with the original 4 experts. The 2 people who appeared later are probably stronger than me. But don't forget what kind of weapons we've equipped on this modified cargo ship. I've made up my mind to attack them as soon as we approach them. The beautiful woman was silent for a few seconds and finally nodded slowly. She naturally knew what kind of weapons were equipped on this modified cargo ship. Can the torpedoes blow up those 2 liners? Can the jellyfish torpedoes kill or severely injure those powerful guys? She was still a bit worried. There's an old saying in China that I like very much. Do you know what it says? Dorrit shook his head. What does it say? Asked the beautiful woman, confused. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, said Dorrit in a deep voice. We won't get anything if we give up the plan just because we're afraid of the other party's military force. But if those Huaxia experts return to their country with the things they got from the 3-star vestige, I believe it won't take a few years for China's military force to surpass ours. By that time, they will have the biggest say. The beautiful woman opened her mouth. Just as she was about to agree with Dorrit's words, a lingering fear exploded in her heart. In fact, at this moment, all the pores on her body stood on end. Run away. Although the beautiful woman didn't know where the danger came from, she still dashed to the side of the sea in an instant. At the same time, she grabbed an iron chain on the cargo ship and forcefully twisted it, pulling a kayak away. Boom! The huge explosion created a monstrous wave. The entire cargo ship was blown up in an instant. Only a few dozen ability users of the M country's Golden Shield Special Abilities Bureau realized that the situation was not right and fled far away, while the rest were either severely injured or killed in the explosion. Inside the subaquatic corvette, Tang Guosheng and Tang Min were shocked by the attack. They learned from Tan Xiao that this was not the result of the subaquatic corvette's main cannon. If it was the main cannon, wouldn't it be able to annihilate all the enemies? The show has just begun, said Tan Xiao with a smile. I've activated the smart targeting system. None of those ability users from Country M will be able to escape. Standing behind Tan Xiu, Cheng Xueme hurriedly said, "Aren't we going to leave some of them alive to interrogate them about the M country's Golden Shield Special Abilities Bureau?" Chapter 799. As far as Tan Xiu was concerned, it didn't make any sense to keep them alive. It didn't matter if he couldn't figure out the situation of Country M's Golden Shield Special Abilities Bureau. He was not a politician, but a cultivator who simply wanted to make some money to buy cultivation resources and then accompany his family to seriously cultivate. Tang Wuxing completely respected Tan Xiu's opinion at this moment. When he found that the latter shook his head, he directly said, "Xiu has his own plans. Since he doesn't want to keep them alive, then kill them all. I believe that Country M will be well behaved for a few years after these Golden Shield Special Abilities Bureau ability users suffer losses." As he said that, everyone's eyes were still glued to the virtual screen, watching the dozen or so Golden Shield Special Abilities Bureau ability users from Country M unleash their special abilities one after another and quickly fled from the place where the cargo ship exploded. The beautiful woman was still fine. She was a water elemental special ability user and also managed to grab a kayak in a hurry. She controlled it to escape a kilometer away and didn't suffer any serious injuries. However, Dorrit didn't have a sixth sense like the beautiful woman, so his reaction was a lot slower. At this moment, his back was badly mutilated and blood stained the corner of his mouth. He desperately controlled the two flames and quickly ran away on the surface of the sea. Boom, 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 6 roars came from behind them. Dorrit and the beautiful woman looked back as they ran, and their complexions drastically changed. They saw 6 members of the Special Abilities Bureau being bombarded by shells out of the water and their bodies exploding into a mist of blood more than 10 meters high in the air. What the hell was that? Dorrit's eyes widened and his chest was filled with flames of anger as he roared while fleeing. Unfortunately, no one answered him. Even the beautiful woman with the lightest injury couldn't explain. Sang Ro was a water elemental of the Golden Shield Special Abilities Bureau. She was 48 years old and definitely ranked among the top 5 in the entire Golden Shield Special Abilities Bureau. She was also Dorrit's right-hand man. At this moment, although she was injured in the explosion of the cargo ship, it didn't affect her ability much. After entering the sea, she was like a fish in water, manipulating the water around her and constantly accelerating her swimming speed. At this time, even a supercar running at full speed couldn't match her speed in the water. The sea is my world. I can survive even if I stay in the sea for a few months. No matter what kind of weapon the other party uses, as long as I'm in the water, it won't pose any threat to me, Hayamoto Sang Ro imagined. Suddenly, a terrifying aura spread out, and even the buzzing sound traveled extremely fast in the water. In less than 2 seconds after she caught sight of it, a huge impact hit her back. As her body exploded, the seawater was dyed red. On the sea, the gorgeous woman operated the kayak and quickly appeared beside Dorrit. Looking at his miserable appearance as he coughed up blood, she shouted in a deep voice, "Come on, I'm faster than you on the sea. I'll take you to escape." The flames of anger in Dorrit's chest subsided a lot. After he sprinted to the kayak, the flames he manipulated dissipated. Seeing that the beautiful woman's injuries were not serious, he turned his head and looked behind him. Boom, boom. He clearly saw the 2 remaining ability users of the Golden Shield Special Abilities Bureau on the sea surface hit by the shells that shot out of the sea. Although the shells did not blow them up into ashes, their bodies were blasted open and they were killed. Bastard! Even if it's a torpedo or a jellyfish mine, it's impossible for it to have such power, speed, and accuracy. What kind of weapon is that? Who's the one who launched the attack on us? Dorrit was almost driven crazy by the sudden appearance of the shells. His heart was bleeding as he watched the men he had trained get blown up one after another. "I think it should be the work of Huaxia's people," said the gorgeous woman coldly. "There's no one else in this sea area except for Huaxia's liner. We should be ambushed by Huaxia, Dorrit. I'm guessing there's even a Chinese submarine at the bottom of the sea." "I also guess that it's their people," roared Dorrit. "But these bastards almost died in the hands of F country's Special Abilities Bureau's ability users. How dare they attack us? Also, we're so far away from them. How did they find us? Our eyes have undergone surgery to greatly improve our eyesight, sneered the gorgeous woman. Don't tell me that no one from Huaxia has undergone surgery? Most importantly, if those two liners aren't just ordinary liners but ones equipped with military reconnaissance systems, it's easy for them to find us through the instruments. Anyways, it's useless no matter how angry we are. The most important thing now is to run away, far away from this sea area. Dorrit took a deep breath to suppress his anger and coldly said with a gloomy face, I'll definitely make those Huaxia bastards pay a painful price as long as I don't die today. I'll massacre them, at least a small city of theirs. Only then can the hatred in my heart be appeased. You're right. Only by slaughtering those Huaxia people and using their blood can we wash away today's humiliation. Suddenly, the gorgeous woman's body trembled. Almost in an instant, two water columns appeared on both sides of the kayak and instantly wrapped around her body, forcibly moving her several meters away. Boom! A cannonball bombarded the kayak and instantly hit Dorrit, who was unaware of it, causing him to lose consciousness amidst the flames of the explosion. His body was still intact, but his internal organs were shattered by the power of the explosion. Unless he had an immortal pill concocted by a perfected golden immortal, only death awaited him. Dorrit! The gorgeous woman looked deeply sorrowful. She didn't have much affection for the people of the Golden Shield Special Abilities Bureau, but it was different for Dorrit. Although she was only a nominal member of the Golden Shield Special Abilities Bureau, it was all because of Dorrit. Although they didn't have any romantic feelings, they had done many things together and had a very good comrade in arms. But at this time, Dorrit, one of the few friends she trusted very much, was killed just like that, causing her to be thoroughly furious. Damned Huaxia people! I'll make you pay with your blood sooner or later. The gorgeous woman angrily roared and let the water dragons roll her as she continued to flee into the distance. Her speed of fleeing was even faster than before. Two half-meter-long cannonballs completely locked on the gorgeous woman in midair. A few seconds after she cursed, the two cannonballs bombarded her body. Inside the subaquatic corvette, Tan Xiu quietly watched the gorgeous woman being killed by the two cannonballs. The coldness in his eyes gradually subsided. He turned to look at Tang Guoxing and said, I still need to stay at sea for 2 more days, Grandpa. I'm sure you've alarmed a lot of people since you brought our Tang family's people here in a hurry. Besides, we've killed the ability users of F country and M country, and the news of their deaths will soon be known by the people of these two countries. Therefore, you must take our Tang family's people to leave this sea area as fast as possible and return to our country. Do we need to disclose the fact that we've killed the ability users of these two countries? Asked Tang Guoxing. For instance, those people above. No need to tell them directly. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, Duan Mulin is actually their spokesperson. Just tell him directly. I'm sure he'll not only solve our future troubles and erase all the traces, but he'll also be very excited about it. This is also our gift to him. Tang Guoxing's eyes lit up. He immediately nodded with satisfaction and said, You're right. Let's do it. Xiu, you must pay attention to your safety after we leave. You must survive no matter what. Don't worry. Tan Xiu nodded. I won't fail miserably. Half a day later, Tan Xiu escorted Tang Guoxing and Tang Min back to the liner and watched the two liners disappear into the distance. Then, he turned to look at Gu Xiaoxue at the side and said, I used to feel a bit of kinship, but only your master could give me that feeling. But now, I have more relatives, and this feeling is really good. An envious look flashed in Gu Xiaoxue's eyes. She was an orphan and didn't know who her parents were, whether they were dead or alive. However, she didn't care about it. What she cared about was her master, Gu Yin. In her opinion, her relatives were her master and the core members of the Everlasting Feast Hall. Relatives? Feeling? Gu Xiaoxue's expression suddenly moved and she asked, Grand Master, do you only regard my master as a relative? A master for a day is a father for a lifetime. Tan Xiu said with a smile. If not relatives, then what are they? Gu Xiaoxue's heart suddenly ached. A complex emotion was crazily growing inside her. She didn't know if it was because of her master or some other reason. In the next 2 days, Tan Xiu took Gu Xiaoxue and Qing Xueme back to the deserted island to continue training Qing Xueme. After the daily training, Qing Xueme gradually controlled her own power and even learned an immortal cultivation technique from Tan Xiu. The taste of cultivation made her feel intoxicated, and she even found herself addicted to it. Unfortunately, Tan Xiu didn't have much time to delay her. She was a bit reluctant when he told her that the training was over. "What should we do next?" asked Qing Xueme with a bit of worry on her face. "I know what you're worried about," said Tan Xiu. "After all, you still have a mission to carry out. Those people in Japan probably think that you died in the vestige. You'll definitely be questioned if you go back rashly. But don't worry. I've already thought of a foolproof plan for you." "I can still return to Japan?" asked Qing Xueme in surprise. "Continue the mission?" "Of course. I've arranged Kawako Yamamoto to cover for you and even help you in the future," said Tan Xiu with a smile. "Naturally, I won't let you get kicked out of the mission." Chapter 800. Tan Xiu explained and then directly sent Kawako to Japan with the subaquatic corvette. Kawako sent someone to pick them up and they finally returned smoothly. Tang Xiu gave her a technological product and told her to deal with the Japanese people. Of course, the technological product was very crappy and belonged to the auxiliary life category. Before parting, Tan Xiu only said one sentence to Qing Xueme, but he believed that Qing Xueme would understand. The sentence was, "From now on, Qing Xueme will be my, Tan Xiu's, person when you're alive, and my, Tan Xiu's, ghost when you die. Only I can make you go further on the road you'll have to walk for thousands of years to come." Early in the morning, the first ray of sunlight rose from the east as the subaquatic corvette docked near Jingmen Island's port. Due to the previous discussion with Tang Guisheng, all the people and ships near the small port had been cleared away and taken over by the everlasting feast hall's people. On the shore of the port, Duanmu Lin and Tang Guisheng stood side by side while several people from the State Ability Users Bureau waited with anticipation on their faces. "Old Tang, are you sure Tan Xiu said today?" Duanmu Lin was also full of anticipation. He couldn't sleep at night ever since he learned from Tang Guisheng that Tan Xiu obtained a subaquatic corvette in the 3-star vestige. He also learned that Tan Xiu used the subaquatic corvette to kill dozens of ability users from the M country's State Ability Users Bureau, including the number 1 figure of the agency, Dorrit. Hence, he was eager to see the subaquatic corvette. Tang Guisheng smiled and said, "When have I ever lied?" Tang Guisheng smiled and said, "That's what Xiu told me to tell you. Don't wait here if you don't believe me." Duanmu Lin quickly smiled apologetically and said, "Please don't. I may not believe anyone, but I believe you, old Tang. Let alone one day, even if I have to wait for a year and a half, I won't even take a single step away." "Don't worry." Tang Guisheng smiled with satisfaction. Xiu had always been a man of his word, a man of his word. Who knows, he might appear in front of us in a while. His voice came to an abrupt halt at this moment. Tang Guisheng looked at the subaquatic corvette floating in the sea ahead with an excited look on his old face. He raised his arm and pointed at it, saying, "That's the subaquatic corvette. Xiu and the others are back." Duanmu Lin looked around and saw the hatch of the subaquatic corvette open and Tan Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue coming out. He immediately took a few steps forward and shouted to Tan Xiu, "Welcome back, little Tang." Tan Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue trod on the water surface and went straight to the front of Duanmu Lin and Tang Guisheng. Tan Xiu then said with a smile, "Senior Duanmu, I feel that it's really good to come back alive. I didn't disappoint you. This time, I should be considered to have performed a meritorious deed. I brought back a big fellow. It's a pity that I didn't manage to bring the other items out. Otherwise, it would definitely bring great benefits to our Huaxia country." Duanmu Lin affectionately held Tan Xiu's hand, shook it hard and said, "It's enough, it's enough. I've learned the specifics of the subaquatic corvette from your grandfather. It's really beyond my wildest dreams. Just by relying on this subaquatic corvette, they were able to kill dozens of ability users from the Special Abilities Bureau of the M country. The most important thing is that even Dorrit was killed. This subaquatic corvette is definitely a terrifying killing weapon under the sea. I don't know if it's a terrifying killing weapon or not, Tan Xiao said with a smile. I only know that its weapon configuration is really good and its speed is fast enough. That's right, the environment inside is also very good. The alien race that left the vestige behind really knows how to enjoy life. Can you take me to visit it? Asked Duanmu Lin with a smile. Senior Duanmu, I got this subaquatic corvette from the 3-star vestige, but it's not my personal property. Tan Xiao waved his hand and said, You represent the government, and I need to give this subaquatic corvette to the government, so you can take it. Tan Xiao, you're a righteous person and a role model for the younger generation, said Duanmu Lin with a satisfied expression. I'll accept this subaquatic corvette on behalf of the country, and I'm sure the reward from the country will be handed over to you soon. A smile outlined on the corner of Tan Xiao's mouth as he smilingly said, This port is good. The Special Abilities Bureau's people will immediately withdraw and hand it over to your Everlasting Feast Hall's people, said Duanmu Lin without hesitation. Also, the government's approval will be sent to you soon. This will be the Everlasting Feast Hall's private port in the future. Thank you, Senior Duanmu, said Tan Xiao with a smile. I'll tell Kong Xia to take 100 boxes of God's Nectar and send them to your Special Abilities Bureau's HQ later. This is also a token of my appreciation. Good. The wrinkles on Duanmu Lin's face stretched out, and his smile was absolutely sincere. Tan Xiao looked at Tang Guisheng and asked, Grandpa, what's your next plan? Are you going to the Everlasting Feast Hall with me? Or are you going to leave Jingmen Island with Senior Duanmu? Tang Guisheng's keen eyes noticed a trace of strange expression on Duanmu Lin's face. He immediately said, I won't blindly meddle in the affairs of you youngsters. I'll go with Brother Duanmu when he returns to the imperial capital. Tang Min, who was behind him, suddenly said with a smile, I've been tossing and turning too much these days, so I'll stay in Jingmen Island and have a good rest. Xiao, you won't refuse to entertain me if Auntie stays, will you? Since Auntie is willing to stay, I'll naturally entertain you with the highest level, said Tan Xiao with a smile. Senior Duanmu, we'll take our leave first. Please don't hesitate to ask if you need my help in the future. A disappointed look flashed in Duanmu Lin's eyes, but he still nodded with a smile. He thought that Tang Guisheng would choose to leave with Tan Xiao, and he would then have an excuse to go to the Everlasting Feast Hall with him. He couldn't figure out the actual situation of the Everlasting Feast Hall when he went there by himself, but he might have an unexpected discovery if he went with Tang Guisheng. What a pity, Duanmu Lin felt somewhat helpless inside. Shortly after, 4 cars left the port. Tan Xiao and Tang Min arrived at the Everlasting Feast Hall and immediately received the best hospitality. Even Gu Yenner got the news and came out of the exquisite pagoda to greet him. Tang Min was very curious about Gu Yenner, so she held her hand and chatted with her for a long time. She even learned a lot of things from Gu Yenner and was greatly shocked. In the evening, just as Tan Xiao and Tang Min were having dinner together, Gu Xiaoxue came to the private room. She looked at Tan Xiao and said, Grandmaster, Banzhou learned that you're in the Everlasting Feast Hall and he wants to see you. Banzhou is also in the Everlasting Feast Hall? Tan Xiao was surprised. Banzhou sent 10 orphans from the northwest yesterday. Except for 2 children with bad temperament, the other 8 children have good aptitude and temperament. He originally planned to do it tonight, but he wants to see you after learning that you're here. He said that he wants to report his work to you. How many children have been adopted by our Everlasting Feast Hall? Asked Tan Xiao. Including the 8 children, a total of 62,200, answered Gu Xiaoxue. How did it suddenly increase by so much? Tan Xiao was shocked. There's a drought in the northwest, and the poorer places are even more difficult to live. Gu Xiaoxue forced a smile. Therefore, there's a phenomenon of people selling their children in private. The government has been trying to solve the problem there, but there are too many people who need help, which makes the lives of many homeless children more difficult. Even the children from more than a dozen orphanages have been taken out by Banzhou's team through special means. Do we still need to take out the children from the orphanages? Tan Xiao was confused. Those orphanages are about to close soon. If we don't accept those children, I'm afraid those children will become homeless sooner or later, said Gu Xiaoxue. As a matter of fact, those orphanages are private orphanages donated by the society, and they are adopted by some warm-hearted people. Have all the traces been cleaned up? Tan Xiu suddenly understood and nodded. When Ban Shou's team reported to me, I realized that such a large number of orphans would be noticed by some people with ulterior motives, said Gu Xiaoxue. So, I sent a group of elites of our everlasting feast hall to wipe all the traces. Even if someone wants to investigate, they will lose the direction. Tan Xiu took a deep breath and looked at Gu Xiaoxue, saying, "Bring Ban's Ho here." All right. As Gu Xiaoxue left the room, Tang Min asked in surprise, "Xiu, why did you adopt so many homeless children?" "To nurture, train, and form an army of cultivators," answered Tan Xiu. "Why did you form an army of cultivators?" asked Tang Min in amazement. "Don't tell me you really want to dominate the world?" Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said, "Auntie, do you think your nephew only has such a goal? Dominate the world? Hee. Wait until my strength improves to a certain level in the future. I can make the entire earth explode with just a sneeze. Haven't you already learned about the existence of the immortal world from Yen? These children I've trained will be good helpers to follow me to roam the immortal world in the future." Tang Min fell into silence for a few minutes before she asked with a bit of expectation, "Do you think Andy has any hope of going to the immortal world, Xiu?" "It's naturally not a problem in the future if you're interested," said Tan Xiu with a smile. "If worst comes to worst, I'll deceive the heavenly Tao laws in this world and the entire Tang family can follow me to the immortal world." "That's great." Tang Min clapped her hands and exclaimed excitedly, "Auntie, it's best not to tell Grandpa about what you know," said Tan Xiu with a smile. "After all, this is no trivial matter. Once it's leaked, I'm afraid it will bring unnecessary troubles to our family. I'll make arrangements for the Tang family in the future." All right. I'll keep it in mind," Tang Min quickly replied. Quickly. Ban's Ho came to the room in a hurry and looked at Tan Xiu as he excitedly called out, "I finally get to see you, boss. I went to Shanghai a few days ago, but I learned that you weren't in Shanghai." Tan Xiu smiled and waved his hand. After Ban's Ho sat down next to him, he smilingly said, "You've been working hard these days. I'll give you a target. You'll stop when the number of adopted children reaches 80,000. I'll have other arrangements for you and Dingzi at that time." Chapter 801. After chatting with Ban's Ho for a while, Tan Xiu found that the man had become more mature and steady in the past year. After praising him and carefully exhorting him, Tang Xiu let Ban's Ho leave. "Grandmaster, do you want to go to Clam Island?" Gu Xiaoxue stood at Tang Xiu's side. The corner of her mouth was outlined on her devastatingly beautiful face, revealing an intoxicating smile. After pondering for a moment, Tan Xiu slowly nodded and said, "Since we've arrived at Jingmen Island and it's not too far from Clam Island, let's go there. Auntie, do you want to go with me?" Tang Min wanted to see the results of Tan Xiu's establishment of the Cultivator Legion, so she replied without hesitation, "I'll go with you." Early morning the next day, a passenger ship docked at the newly built port of Clam Island. Just as Tan Xiu, Tang Min, and Gu Xiaoxue came out of the cabin, they saw more than a dozen stalwart men standing guard at the port. One of them even strode toward them. His expression slightly changed when he saw Tan Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue. His expression turned particularly fanatical as he greeted respectfully, "Boss?" Tan Xiu nodded with a smile and asked, "Who's in charge of Clam Island now?" "It's Yuan Yi," answered the man. Tan Xiu nodded and asked again, "How's the construction of Clam Island? Where are the children being settled?" "The construction is still in progress, and it's difficult to see the results in a short time," answered the man. "As for the children, they are all in the southern peninsula. It's a restricted area that even we don't have the right to enter." "All right, I'll go to the southern peninsula to take a look," said Tan Xiu. "Understood." The man nodded respectfully and quietly retreated to the side. Tan Xiu took Tang Min and didn't fly there. Clam Island was currently under construction, so they slowly approached the southern peninsula along the coastline. Bush, bush. Two ghostly figures silently sprang out from the thicket. Along with a looming killing intent, two stalwart men appeared in front of Tan Xiu's group. Presumptuous! Gu Xiaoxue took a step forward and berated in a deep voice. When the two strong men saw that it was Tan Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue, the murderous aura they emitted instantly disappeared without a trace. Their expressions became somewhat frightened and they hastily saluted respectfully. Tan Xiu waved his hand and lightly smiled. It's their duty. Don't blame them. Inform Yuan Yi to immediately gather all the children. I need to see them. Yes. One of them answered and instantly disappeared on the spot. The other person quickly led Tan Xiu and the others into the forest and approached a wall that was 2 to 3 meters tall. They jumped over the wall and entered a wide area. On this flat ground, there were many 1-meter-tall blue stones. They were so densely packed that it was impossible to count how many there were. A few minutes later, Yuan Yi, who was wearing a black exercise suit and had his long hair tied with a rope, sprinted to the front of Tan Xiu and the others as fast as he could and respectfully called out, "Boss." Tan Xiu nodded and said with a smile, "You are Yuan Yi? What's your current cultivation level?" "Middle stage of foundation establishment," answered Yuan Yi. "Not bad, but you need to keep working hard." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "You must have a high status in the Everlasting Feast Hall since you can be assigned here. According to the reward rules, the first 10 cultivators to break through to the Golden Core stage will be rewarded handsomely. Work hard and strive to be one of the top 10. Yuan Ye's eyes gleamed as he firmly said, "This subordinate will definitely do his best." Tan Xiu flicked a spirit-amassing pill and lightly smiled, "Don't tell others that I'm giving you special treatment. Just work hard. Whether you can become my right-hand man in the future or be stepped on by others, it all depends on your own efforts." "Thank you, boss. I will." Yuan Yi was a bit excited. It must be noted that the Everlasting Feast Hall's medicinal pills were very important cultivation resources, and it was not easy to get one. 10 minutes later, Tan Xiu finally knew the reason for the large number of blue stones placed in this spacious area. Silhouettes came from the direction of the short buildings in the north. Like a long dragon, groups of skinny and small children, under the lead of dozens of strong men, quickly ran through the neatly arranged blue stones. They seemed to know which blue stone belonged to them as they climbed up the blue stone and stood straight with their heads held high. Tan Xiu's spiritual sense swept over and was surprised to find a total of 62,200 blue stones, with a child standing on each blue stone. Interesting. Through his spiritual sense, Tan Xiu found that there were dozens of children less than 3 years old, escorted by the stalwart men and placed them on the blue stones. "All the children are here, boss," said Yuan Yi respectfully. Tan Xiu nodded in response. As he lifted his feet, the 62,200 children looked at him as if he was walking on a flight of stairs. He walked higher and higher in the air and finally arrived in front of the first row of blue stones in the north. Standing tens of meters in the air, Tan Xiu looked around and nodded with satisfaction. "Some of you know who I am and some don't. But I'll introduce myself to you now. I hope you'll remember me and keep me firmly in your hearts. I'm Tan Xiu, the boss who provides you with food and clothing, as well as your living and learning. From today onward, you'll only address me with one word, boss. From today onward, remember my name, remember my identity, and remember the most important thing. I, Tan Xiu, will be the only person you'll be loyal to in this life." While speaking, Tan Xiu quietly released his own aura. Although it was only a weak oppressive aura, it still made the 62,200 children's faces change. What they didn't know was that Tan Xiu had used some special means to deeply engrave his image in the hearts of these children. Soul imprint technique. It was an extremely common technique in the immortal world, but it was very useful in subduing subordinates. Half a minute later, Tan Xiu retracted his aura and nodded with satisfaction. "Take them back, Yuan Yi. I'll leave them to you to take care of later. Whether it's their living, learning, or cultivation, they must progress according to the current military academy's management model. If you don't understand the military academy's management model, I can ask Wolfhead to come back from 9 Dragons Island to help you." Yuan Yi floated over and respectfully said, I know the training model of the world's armies, boss, but I don't know much about the military academy's management model. I'll inform Wolfhead to come and help you for the time being, said Tan Xiu. Yuan Yi replied and then began to issue orders. The 62,200 children were immediately taken back by the dozens of big men. Tang Min looked up at Tan Xiu, who was hovering in the air. Her eyes were full of splendor. Everyone had fantasized about having a pair of wings and being able to fly freely in the sky like a bird. Even though Tang Min now had a very high status, she had also fantasized about it countless times. I must cultivate. I must become a powerful martial cultivator. Tang Min's recent experiences and knowledge had constantly changed her state of mind. Looking at Tan Xiu's stalwart figure, she clenched her fists and secretly made up her mind. 2 days later, Tan Xiu stayed here to contact the children and understand their problems. Using both carrot and stick, the children had a deeper impression of him. At the same time, Tan Xiu also met the 5 children, Tang Jin, Tang Mu, Tang Shui, Tang Hua, and Tang Tuesday. To his surprise, these 5 children were able to sense qi and could even control the qi flow inside their bodies. They were at the first or second stage of qi refining. Speak. Are there any unsolved problems in training these children here? Before leaving, Tan Xiu looked at Qing Yi and asked with a smile. There are 3 problems in total, said Qing Yi. First, the identity of these children is highly confidential, so ordinary people have no way to get in touch with them. Especially those young children, there are dozens of them who still need to drink milk. Although we have dozens of people here, it's too much of a headache to be a father and a mother. Tan Xiu thought for a moment and slowly nodded. We can temporarily send those under the age of 3 to a nearby place and then hire some good-natured nannies to take care of them. Second, we have a serious shortage of logistical supplies. Cheng Yi nodded and said, we're almost unable to support the food supply for more than 60,000 children. The problem of feeding more than 60,000 children is that even if some food is sent over, the rate of consumption is too fast. That's easy to handle, said Tan Xiu. Xiao Xue, after you go back, send some people to set up a logistical supply fleet to transport living supplies here. Understood. Gu Xiaoxue nodded. Boss, we only have dozens of instructors here, said Qing Yi again. It's really difficult to train the children according to the military management model. Can you send another group of people here? It's not a problem to send some people here. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, but the most important problem now is that our everlasting feast hall has too few core members. Once we send outsiders here, our most secretive plan will face the danger of being leaked. Qing Yi spread his hands and said, then what about here? Tan Xiu raised his hand and said, how many people do you think will be sent here if I send you some people? 200 people, said Qing Yi immediately. At least 200 people, only then can we solve the problem of the shortage of instructors here. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, it's impossible to send 200 people. Give me some time. I'll send 100 people in 2 months at most. However, I need you to send some people to train them for 3 months. Are they not from our everlasting feast hall? Asked Qing Yi quickly. Not yet, but they will be soon, said Tan Xiu lightly. 62,200 former orphans would become Tan Xiu's most loyal men in the future, as well as the foundation for him to return to the immortal world. Therefore, the instructors who would train these children must be absolutely loyal and devoted. It seemed that the plan he had been thinking about recently was about to start. Chapter 802. Tan Xiu originally had 2 plans in the near future. The first was to go to Longquan Bay in Kanas to try to open the mysterious immortal trove, and the second was to go to Israel with a large sum of money to buy people. But now it seemed that going to Israel was more urgent than going to Kanas. 2 days later, Tan Xiu appeared alone in Hong Kong. After getting off the passenger ship, he got into a taxi empty-handed. He originally planned to go directly to his residence in Hong Kong, but on the way, he changed his mind and went to the Grand Fortune Jewelry Group. Although he was the big boss of Grand Fortune Jewelry, he had never been there before. Jade. He had a lot of jade in his interspatial ring, most of which were of very high quality. Once these jade were processed and carved, he would have a large number of finished jade carvings. He could make a lot of money if he sold them. He wasn't short of money at the moment, but if he could make more money through the Grand Fortune Jewelry sales channel, he could buy more jade raw materials. Central, located on the north coast of Hong Kong, was the commercial, financial, and banking center of Hong Kong. It was also the decision-making and power center of the SAR government. It could be said that this place was the most prosperous place in the whole of Hong Kong. The Grand Fortune Jewelry Group was a 33-story building covering a large area. The first to the 13th floor was the commercial area with various luxury brand shops, restaurants, entertainment, supermarkets, and other high-end consumer areas. The 14th to 18th floors were the boutique stores of the Grand Fortune Jewelry Group. The 19th to 33rd floors were the core areas of the Grand Fortune Jewelry Group. Tan Xiu took a taxi to the south gate of the building. After paying the fare, he strolled inside. After checking the signs inside, he took the elevator straight to the 14th floor. Welcome. Four hostesses in cheongsams with curvaceous figures bowed one after another. The smiles on their beautiful faces were very sweet. Tan Xiu nodded slightly. After entering the door, he found that the store was decorated with high-end decorations. The staff was not bad, but the number of customers was also quite high. He even saw a member of a tour group looking at the gold, silver, jewelry, jade, and jadeite inside under the guidance of a tour guide. Hello, sir. How may I be of service to you? A smiling female shop assistant in a black suit came up and asked. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, I'm just strolling around. You continue with your work. Don't worry about me. A look of disappointment flashed in the shop assistant's eyes. Tan Xiu's appearance was extremely handsome. Even at first glance, it made her heart beat faster by half a beat. In addition, Tan Xiu was wearing famous brands. She felt that he should be the second generation of a rich family, or even the third generation of a rich family. I don't have a boyfriend. The shop assistant muttered in her heart and left reluctantly. Tan Xiu didn't know what the shop assistant was thinking. With a leisurely mood, he strolled around the store on this floor. He found that the items sold were very ordinary. The most expensive piece of jewelry was only a few $100,000. 15th floor. When Tan Xiu arrived, he found that the prices of the items here were higher. There were even a few platinum diamond rings that were worth more than $1 million. Afterward, he looked at the items on the 16th and 17th floors. He found that the higher he went, the more expensive the items were. Especially on the 17th floor. Although there weren't many items, there were more than a dozen of them that were worth more than $10 million. Hello, sir. The 18th floor is the VIP area of our Grand Fortune Jewelry. May I ask if you're a VIP of our Grand Fortune Jewelry? Two big men in black suits stopped Tan Xiu at the elevator door, while a beautiful woman at the counter next to them asked politely. No. Tan Xiu shook his head. Then, are you a staff member of our Grand Fortune Jewelry? Asked the woman again. You can say so. Tan Xiu thought for a while and said, if you're a staff member of our Grand Fortune Jewelry, you'll need to swipe your work card to go upstairs, said the beautiful woman with a smile. I don't have a work card. Tan Xiu shook his head and forced a smile. The woman looked blank for a moment before she immediately said with a smile, you must be joking, sir. Every staff member of our Grand Fortune Jewelry has a work card. You won't be able to go to the upper floors without a work card. Tan Xiu fell into silence for a moment and curiously asked, are the gold, silver, and jewelry on the 18th floor more expensive? The price is indeed higher, said the beautiful woman. A disdainful look flashed in her eyes as she spoke. Although she concealed it well, Tan Xiu's sharp eyes still caught it quickly. However, he didn't bother to pay attention to this beautiful woman's thoughts. He took out his mobile and dialed Hao Lei's number. Can't get through for the time being? Tan Xiu stared blankly and immediately released his spiritual sense. Half a second later, he found Hao Lei's figure in the jade processing room on the 26th floor. At the moment, she was concentrating on carving a fist-sized jade stone, while her mobile phone and two palm-sized notebooks were placed on the table nearby. Tan Xiu looked at the beautiful woman and said, I'll have to trouble you to inform the person in charge here, Hao Lei. Tell her to come down. By the way, she should be on the 26th floor. The beautiful woman looked at Tan Xiu with a strange expression. The smile on her face faded a lot and said, "Have you made an appointment with our general manager in advance, sir?" "No. I just came to Hong Kong, so she doesn't know." Tan Xiu shook his head. The beautiful woman was silent for a moment and then said with an apologetic look, "I'm sorry. I don't have the right to contact her since you haven't made an appointment with our general manager in advance. Sir, if you want to buy gold, silver, and jewelry from our store, there are many good things on the 17th floor, many of which are very expensive." Tan Xiu let out a wry smile. He turned around and walked to the chair on the side and sat down, saying, "Forget it. I'll inform her myself. Just do your thing and don't mind me." The beautiful woman frowned and looked at Tan Xiu for a long time. Finally, she secretly shook her head. She could recognize most of the young masters from the aristocratic families in Hong Kong, but she was sure that she had never seen Tan Xiu before. Furthermore, he seemed to have just arrived in Hong Kong, so he shouldn't be a Hong Kong native. There must be something fishy going on. The beautiful woman turned her head and looked at the two big men in black suits. While Tang Xiu wasn't paying attention, she quickly made a gesture. Immediately, one of the big men strode to Tan Xiu and said in an unfriendly tone, "Sir, since you said that you have a way to contact our general manager, then we'll give you 10 minutes. Please leave this place if you don't get any results in 10 minutes. Tan Xiu lightly glanced at the big man in front of him and then cast an art. His voice condensed into a line and quickly transmitted to Hao Lei's ears on the 26th floor. "It's me. Come to the elevator on the 17th floor." On the 26th floor, Hao Lei was sitting in front of the workbench, concentrating on carving the jade in her hand. She was the general manager of the Grand Fortune Jewelry, but she had a very high interest in carving jade. She usually came here to carve for a while when she had nothing to do. "Who's there?" Hao Lei abruptly raised her head and looked around. She found that other than some busy staff, no one was looking at her, and no one was talking to her. That voice, it's a bit familiar. Hao Lei was sure that she wasn't hallucinating, but she couldn't remember whose voice it was no matter how hard she racked her brain. "I'm Tan Xiu." Just as her head was filled with confusion, the voice once again rang in her ears. In an instant, Hao Lei abruptly jumped up from her chair, her eyes bursting with light. Almost without hesitation, she put down the jade and carving knife in her hands and took off her work clothes as fast as she could. Then she rushed toward the elevator with big strides. She finally understood why she felt that the voice was a bit familiar. It was the voice of the big boss. She was even more clear that the big boss could transmit sound over a long distance. At the elevator on the 17th floor, a young man with an obsequious smile followed a hot and beautiful girl. When they arrived, the young man directly handed out the VIP card and said, "We want to go shopping on the 18th floor." An envious look flashed in the eyes of the beautiful woman behind the counter. She respectfully took the VIP card and came out, saying, "Please wait for a while. The elevator will be here soon." The young man ignored the beautiful woman and looked at the girl next to him with a flattering expression, saying, "Little Hui, I've been pestering my mother for 2 days just to get this VIP card. You can choose any of the treasures on the 18th floor of the Grand Fortune Jewelry if you see one you like." Yang Hui, the only daughter of a rich man in Hong Kong, was also the goddess in the eyes of the young man. She had been spoiled since childhood and had always been proud and arrogant. Although the background of the young man around her was not inferior to hers, she didn't have much interest. "You said it yourself, Qi Changxing. I've been wanting to buy that crystal love for a long time, but the price is too high, so I've been hesitating. Since you said you'll give it to me, then don't go back on your words." Qi Changxing nodded without hesitation and said, "Don't worry. As long as you like it, I don't mind taking out all my savings to buy it for you." Yang Hui pursed her lips and was a bit disappointed inwardly. She didn't know how much savings Qi Changxing had, but she knew the price of the crystal love very well. While waiting for the elevator, Yang Hui turned her head and glanced at Tan Xiu, who was sitting on the chair. After thinking for a while, she called out to Tan Xiu, "Hey, can you give me the chair?" Tan Xiu raised his head and glanced at Yang Hui before lowering his head again. Qi Changxing looked at Tan Xiu. He didn't see Tan Xiu's face clearly, so he didn't recognize that this man in front of him was the malefic star who once caused the Qi family to lose 2 billion yuan. In order to show off in front of his goddess, he immediately walked over and kicked Tan Xiu's calf, saying, "Hey buddy, don't you need to be a gentleman in front of a lady? Please let me have a seat." Tan Xiu raised his head again and indifferently said, "What if I don't want to be a gentleman?" Chapter 803. Tan Xiu was disgusted by Yang Hui's attitude and disliked Qi Changxing's means of pursuing a girl, especially a girl who didn't know how to be polite. However, he couldn't help but sigh at how small the world was. He never expected to bump into an old acquaintance like Qi Changxing as soon as he arrived in Hong Kong. Qi Changxing's words had just come out when he saw Tan Xiu's face. The words that were about to come out of his mouth were swallowed back into his stomach in a flash, and even his calves couldn't help but shiver. Fiend? At this moment, Qi Changxing regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that he would run into a living evil star like Tang Xiu here. What scared him the most was that he had kicked him lightly just now. "What about me?" asked Tan Xiu indifferently. "Are you not satisfied with my answer? Or do you think you kicked me too lightly just now?" Qi Changxing's heart turned cold in an instant. He would have knelt down before Tan Xiu if it weren't for his goddess. Squeezing out a smile, Qi Changxing respectfully bowed and said, "Mr. Tang, Changxing absolutely doesn't dare to have any dissatisfied thoughts. Had I known it was you, I wouldn't have dared to kick you even if I had the courage to do so. Please be magnanimous and don't stoop to my level." Tan Xiu shook his head and sighed. "Why do you never learn from your mistakes? Was the previous lesson too light?" "I've never done anything out of line since we parted ways in Hong Kong, Mr. Tang," said Qi Changxing bitterly. "It's just that I like Xiaowei, so I just wanted to perform better." Tan Xiu could understand Qi Changxing's thoughts, but he didn't approve of his means of pursuing a girl. He lightly said, "Pursuing a girl doesn't depend on material or money. It's the mutual affection between a man and a woman that can last a long time and spend a lifetime together. You're on your own now." Having said that, Tan Xiu didn't want to talk to Qi Changxing anymore. He closed his eyes again and waited for Hao Lei's arrival. Yang Hui looked at Tan Xiu with a strange expression, and her eyes darted to Qi Changxing from time to time. Suddenly, she became curious about this handsome young man in front of her. His words and actions were filled with a mature charm. She knew Qi Changxing's identity and knew that he must have a powerful background if he could make him act so respectfully in Hong Kong. "Who are you?" Yang Hui could not help but ask. Tan Xiu didn't answer her. He didn't even bother to answer her. His actions caused the beautiful woman to reveal a surprised expression. The way she looked at Tan Xiu was completely different from before. Even the two burly men guarding the elevator door looked at each other with a confused look on their faces. Buzz! The elevator door slowly opened and Hao Lei strode out. Her eyes swept over Qi Changxing and Yang Hui before finally landing on Tan Xiu. She paced a few steps forward and respectfully called out, "What brings you here, boss?" Tan Xiu opened his eyes, stood up and said, "I need to talk to you about something. I happened to pass by Hong Kong, so I dropped by. Get me a work permit later, lest I get turned away again." Hao Lei abruptly turned around and glared at the beautiful woman next to the bar counter, shouting, "He's the big boss of our Grand Fortune Jewelry. How dare you stop him before?" The beautiful woman's pupils shrunk and the hairs all over her body stood on end. She hurriedly said with a frightened expression, "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were the big boss." "It's all right. You can't be blamed for not knowing." Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, "It's your duty to stop people who don't meet the standards. Hao Lei, please don't blame her. All right, let's find a quiet place and talk about something." Hao Lei quickly nodded and ignored the beautiful woman. She led Tan Xiu into the elevator and then pressed the button for the 33rd floor. As the elevator went up, Tan Xiu asked, "How's the business of the Grand Fortune Jewelry recently? Did you encounter any difficulties?" "Our business has been good recently, but the sales have decreased by 20% compared to the first half of last year, said Hao Lei. It has nothing to do with the money. The main thing is, what's the main thing? Asked Tan Xiu. I don't know the reason, but there's a force in the country that suddenly purchased jade raw materials on a large scale, leading to an extreme shortage of jade raw materials in the market. We originally had a supply channel, but the price has skyrocketed recently and the quantity has obviously decreased, leading to a shortage of our stock. The increase in price has also greatly affected our sales. A smile appeared on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth. He naturally knew which force in the country was secretly purchasing jade raw materials on a large scale. But he didn't expect that the price of jade raw materials would skyrocket due to this reason and even affect his business. Is our Grand Fortune jewelry the only one affected? It's not just us, said Hao Lei quickly. All the major jewelry merchants in the country have been affected. Many of them are secretly regretting that they didn't stock more jade raw materials. Since everyone is affected, then it's not an internal matter of Grand Fortune jewelry. Tan Xiu nodded with satisfaction. You have a need in this regard, so I'll solve it. That's right, how many jade raw materials do you need to solve the shortage of stock? Hao Lei was stunned. She didn't expect that her big boss could help solve the jade reserve problem. She thought for a while and said, a ton of jade raw materials can solve the urgent problem. If the quantity is too much, half a ton is barely enough. If I give you 5 tons, can you use it to make more profits? Tan Xiu smiled. When the jade raw materials are sufficient in the future, can you use the profits to buy more jade raw materials? Hao Lei was at a loss whether to cry or laugh. You don't know the scarcity of jade raw materials, do you, boss? Although the major jade mines all over the world produce a lot of jade raw materials every year, the total output is less than 5 tons. You actually are, alright, don't stare at me. If you can really get 5 tons of good quality jade raw materials, I guarantee that you can buy at least 2 tons more in the future. Of course, you can buy at least 5 tons more if you sell the engraved products after processing. Doubled? Tang Xiu's expression moved and asked with a slightly surprised expression. That's right. I can definitely double it. Hao Lei firmly nodded. Tan Xiu nodded and followed Hao Lei out of the elevator. After coming to her office, he directly took out an interspatial ring and handed it to her, saying, "This interspatial ring is for you. It's a reward for the benefits you're about to earn for the company. There are 5 tons of jade inside. You can take out the jade raw materials and see their quality after you've bound it with your blood." An interspatial ring? Hao Lei's whole body seemed to be struck by lightning and she directly froze on the spot. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. After a while, she carefully took the interspatial ring with trembling hands. Then she bit her finger and dripped her blood on it. Whoosh, a fist-sized jade raw material appeared in her hand out of thin air and was then put into the interspatial ring under her control. After repeatedly testing it more than a dozen times, she excitedly said, "I just observed it with my spiritual sense and found that there are indeed a lot of jade raw materials inside, boss." That's great. The reputation of our Grand Fortune jewelry will definitely be greatly improved with these jade raw materials, and we'll be able to obtain more benefits in a short time. The quality is really good, isn't it? Asked Tan Xiu with a smile. Very good. Hao Lei firmly nodded and said, though it can't be compared with those top-grade jade raw materials, it's still considered as top-grade jade raw materials. I'll immediately contact all the carving masters and have them carve the finished products day and night. You'll see what happens next, said Tan Xiu. I'll give you 3 months to buy a batch of jade raw materials with the money you get from selling the jade wares. To keep in mind that the market price is very high, so try to suppress the price and maximize the profits. No problem. Hao Lei solemnly replied. Tan Xiu suddenly recalled something and asked, "What's the most valuable item in the VIP area on the 18th floor of our Grand Fortune jewelry? How valuable is it?" "It's a blue crystal named the Heart of the Ocean," said Hao Lei with a smile. "This blue crystal is the size of a baby's fist and has a blue color all over. It was carved by the most outstanding carving master in Hong Kong in 6 to 10 years, and it's also the signature treasure of our Grand Fortune jewelry. As for the price, it's priced at 1,888,888,888 million. Some super-rich people in Hong Kong want to buy it, but they eventually flinched after seeing such a high price. Tan Xiao was secretly surprised. He didn't expect that a blue crystal could be priced at such a high price. After thinking for a while, he slowly said, "Take me to have a look." "All right." Hao Lei replied and led Tan Xiao to the VIP area on the 18th floor. Several security doors were opened and the two of them appeared in a transparent glass room. "Is this the blue crystal?" Tang Xiao had a look of disbelief when he saw the flawless, sparkling and translucent heart of the ocean inside the tempered glass cabinet on the booth. Hao Lei didn't notice the strange expression on Tan Xiao's face. She looked at the heart of the ocean and couldn't move her eyes away. She gently nodded and said, "That's right. This is the heart of the ocean. Rumor has it that it was fished out from the sea by a country Y, but I don't know how exactly it was fished out. You can give it to your beloved girl if you like it, boss. I'm sure every girl will love it." "Give it to a girl I like?" Tan Xiao nearly coughed up a mouthful of blood. He glared at Hao Lei and nearly cursed her for having eyes but failing to recognize Mount Tai and recklessly wasting God's gift. "What is this?" "This is a treasure that immortals yearn for, and it's something that countless top immortals are looking forward to getting. Once this thing appears in the immortal world, it will definitely set off a bloody battle for it. But this treasure is actually regarded as jewelry?" Chapter 804. Had it been in the immortal world, Tan Xiao would have found it hard to believe that a peerless treasure like the source waterstone was being sold as jewelry. But this was Earth, and Tan Xiao had seen too many peerless treasures being sold as ordinary items by the secular world. "Where can I buy this thing?" Tan Xiao took a deep breath and turned to look at Hao Lei. Hao Lei finally noticed that Tan Xiao's mood was not right. She glanced at the heart of the ocean in astonishment and slowly said, "As far as I know, there's only one blue crystal of this quality. There are a few amethysts, and the most famous one is the gem of rose inlaid on the crown of the Empress of Country Y's imperial family. Unfortunately, that gem of rose is not for sale. You can't buy it no matter how much money you have." A glint flashed in Tan Xiao's eyes as he nodded and said, "Help me pay attention to the best crystals in the world. If you find one with similar or better quality, immediately tell me. I'll take this heart of the ocean since it's very important to me." "It's a blessing for this heart of the ocean to be fancied by you, boss," said Hao Lei with a smile. In a high-end cafe near the Grand Fortune Jewelry Building, Qi Changxing was absent-mindedly drinking his coffee. Even though the goddess he had admired for a long time was sitting opposite him, he couldn't be bothered to be attentive at the moment. Fortunately, Tan Xiao didn't make things difficult for him, else he knew that even if he didn't die, a layer of his skin would have been peeled off. Of course. He didn't remember that the Grand Fortune jewelry was Tan Xiao's business before, but he suddenly recalled it after seeing Hao Lei. The emergence of this memory made him secretly make up his mind that he would never go to the Grand Fortune jewelry to buy things again. He would try not to set foot within 2 kilometers of the Grand Fortune jewelry and the everlasting feast hall to avoid encountering that fiend again. "Qi Changxing, there's something wrong with you." Yang Hui stirred the sweetened coffee with a spoon. A strange expression hung on her beautiful face, but her tone was deliberately indifferent. Qi Changxing raised his head and bitterly said, "I won't be scared even if I meet the richest man in Hong Kong, Li Juren. It can be said that the only person in this world who can make me afraid is that." Yang Hui narrowed her eyes and quickly asked, "Who's that?" Qi Changxing was silent for a few seconds and then quietly looked around. After finding that no one was paying attention to them, he lowered his voice and said, "Shall we, if I tell you, you must promise not to spread it out. Otherwise, I'll be in big trouble." Yang Hui immediately said seriously, "I guarantee that this matter will only be known by the heavens, the earth, you, and me. No one else will know about it. His name is Tan Xiao, the big boss of Grand Fortune Jewelry and the Everlasting Feast Hall," said Qi Changxing in a low voice. "You should know about Jiang Yu, Chen Fei, and Du Yang, right?" Yang Hui's eyes instantly turned round and she exclaimed, Something happened to some of their businesses last year. I heard that they offended some very powerful people and got into big trouble in the end. Oh right, there's also your Chi family. Don't tell me he did it? Of course it was him, said Chi Changxing with a forced smile. I'm afraid he's the only one in China who can do it. My Chi family only lost 2 billion yuan, but the other 3. Alas, let me tell you something. The 4 of us offended Tan Xiu and lost at least 20 billion yuan. Gasp, Yang Hui knew what 20 billion yuan meant. Even if her Yang family was a big family in Hong Kong and had many businesses in other places, their total assets were less than half of 20 billion yuan. At dusk, after Tan Xiu and Hao Lei had dinner together, Mo all rushed to Hong Kong with 10 guards. After calling Tan Xiu, Hao Lei drove him to Hong Kong's airport. Do you want me to go with you, boss? Asked Hao Lei with an expectant look in her eyes. Forget it. Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said, just stay in Hong Kong and try to process those 5 tons of raw jade as soon as possible and then sell them. I'm afraid I'll need a lot of raw jade in September, so I hope it won't delay my business. No problem. Hao Lei nodded. It took 6.5 hours to fly from Hong Kong to Tel Aviv. They took off at 8 a.m. and arrived in Tel Aviv at about 3:30 a.m. Since Tan Xiu used the small notebook, none of the passengers who took the flight that night were able to board the plane. There were only 12 people on the plane, including Tan Xiu. Tel Aviv was the second largest city in Israel and a modern international metropolis with a population of about 400,000. It was bordered by the eastern Mediterranean Sea and had an urban area of 51.76 square kilometers. The labor camp 1319 was not located in downtown Tel Aviv. It was located in Bat Yam, one of the surrounding urban agglomerations. Bat Yam only had a population of a few 100,000 people, but its economic level was quite good. Although it was slightly worse than the third-tier cities in China, it was still comparable to some of the counties under the municipalities. Labor Camp 1319 was located more than 10 kilometers southeast of Bat Yam. It covered a large area and looked like a sturdy castle from the outside. Early morning, Tan Xiu and the others smoothly checked into the best hotel in Bat Yam. Mo All, who had been here before, was particularly familiar with this small town. On the 5th floor of the hotel, standing by the window, Tan Xiu looked to the southeast and asked, All, tell me what you think. The current top commander of Labor Camp 1319 is no longer the one we met before, said Mo All. I contacted my former collaborator on the way here, Gus Gillis, a powerful gang leader in Tel Aviv. I learned from him that the new top commander of the labor camp is called Augustino, a particularly greedy person. But that guy has been using a particularly insidious trick to amass wealth recently, so it's going to be more difficult to buy a large number of prisoners from Labor Camp 1319 than before. Using the prisoners to amass wealth. Tan Xiu was surprised. How did he do it? Dark life and death boxing match, said Mo All. Tan Xiu furrowed his brows. He suddenly recalled the scene he once saw in a movie where the prisoners of several prisons were gathered together for an underground boxing match, while a large number of rich people secretly came to the boxing venue through shady channels to gamble. If it was really like the movie, Tan Xiu realized that it would be very difficult to buy the world's top assassin, Spectre, with $100 million. Tell me what you think. Tan Xiu lit a cigarette and calmly asked. I think you should meet our former collaborator, Gus Gillis, first, said Mo All. He's the most suitable person to buy prisoners. However, Gus Gillis is also a greedy person. We'll need to spend more money if we don't want to expose our identities. Tan Xiu pondered for a moment and nodded. It's indeed not suitable for us to show up directly. You're right. We'll only need to spend some money at most if we use the local tyrant to do things for us. It'll save us from being exposed later and implicating us. Where's this Gus Gillis you mentioned? He's in Tel Aviv. Can you ask him to come here? Asked Tan Xiu. Arrange for us to meet. No problem, said Mo All with a smile. Gus Gillis may not know our specific identities, but he's well aware of our strength. He won't dare to easily offend us. Tan Xiu nodded and motioned for him to contact Gus Gillis. He then silently pondered about the matter. He brought a total of $1 billion this time, but he had no idea how many prisoners he could buy. However, he needed to consider another matter. If $1 billion couldn't buy 100 powerful prisoners, then he would have to implement another plan. However, this plan was somewhat dangerous, and the slightest carelessness would lead to the Tel Aviv government's armed suppression. Furthermore, he had to meet the prisoners before he bought them. If possible, he decided to enter the prison as a prisoner first. After he selected the prisoners he wanted to buy, he would discuss the deal with the prison's top officer, Augustino. In the afternoon, 4 black SUVs roared and arrived at the hotel where Tanshio was staying. Protected by more than a dozen stalwart men, a middle-aged man in a white suit and sunglasses stepped out of the 3rd black SUV. The middle-aged Caucasian man had a shaved head and tattoos on his left cheek and neck. After Moo appeared at the entrance of the hotel with 2 guards, Gus Gillis put on a bright smile and strode towards Moo. "Nice to see you in Bat Yam, old friend. You still have such an extraordinary aura even after so many years." Moo smiled and hugged him. "You look a lot younger, Gus Gillis. Could it be that you're living a better and better life after ruling Tel Aviv's underworld? Don't listen to other people's nonsense, all." Gus Gillis shook his head and smilingly said, "If I could rule the entire Tel Aviv underworld, I'd wake up laughing even in my dreams. What a pity. Youngsters nowadays are getting more and more powerful. I've been forced by a bunch of little bastards recently. Tell me, is there anything I can help you with?" asked Moo with a strange smile. Gus Gillis narrowed his eyes and looked at the 2 men behind Moo. Then he immediately said with a smile, "Don't worry about it. I'm very curious though. What kind of big shot can make you become his subordinate? That's right, there's another question. Where's your dear brother? One? How come I don't see him?" "My brother is on another mission, so he didn't come with me," said Moo with a smile. "As for our boss, don't blame me for not reminding you in advance that you'd better be respectful when you see him. Not only does he have a lot of powerful men than me, but he also has a terrifying strength himself." "Can you tell me where you come from, all?" asked Gus Gillis in surprise. The smile on Moo's face faded a lot. He moved closer to Gus Gillis and whispered in his ear, "I don't mind telling you if your power is comparable to the Stygian Club. Else, telling you will only harm you." Chapter 805. Gus Gillis had seen a lot of powerful people and also met many people he couldn't afford to provoke. Yet he didn't have much fear toward those people. However, at this moment, a chill suddenly rose in his heart and even froze the curiosity at the bottom of his heart. The Stygian Club. Gus Gillis had heard of this legendary organization and knew how terrifying its strength was. But from Moo's words, it was clear that his boss had the power to wrestle with the Stygian Club. After taking a deep breath, Gus Gillis concealed a smile. Although his smile was a bit stiff, his words were very clear. "Since it's inconvenient to say, then forget it. But I still don't understand why your boss is looking for me. Is it the same as last time? Are you targeting some prisoners in labor camp 1319? Don't worry, Gus Gillis. You'll naturally know my boss's intentions when you see him," said Moo. A few minutes later, Moo brought Gus Gillis to the guest room where Tanshio was staying. Although Gus Gillis was surprised by Tanshio's young age, he was still quite respectful. After exchanging some pleasantries with Tanshio, he then asked about the doubt in his heart. "Boss Tang, I don't think you just want to chat with me since you called me here, right? If there's anything you need my help with, I'll never refuse as long as it's within my ability." "May I know how much you know about Labor Camp 1319? asked Tanshio. "Are you familiar with the highest official of this prison?" Gus Gillis nodded and said, "Boss Tang, you should have heard from Wu that I was once imprisoned in Labor Camp 1319. Fortunately, I had a lot of wealth before I was imprisoned there, so I used most of my money to buy my freedom. Hence, I know a lot about the situation inside this prison. As for Augustino, I've only dealt with him a few times, and he secretly arranged the Dark Life and Death boxing tournament. If that's the case, why don't we make a deal?" Tanshio said with satisfaction. "What deal?" asked Gus Gillis. I'll pay you $20 million for your hard work, said Tan Xiu. Help me buy a batch of prisoners from Labor Camp 1319. Also, you need to find a way to get me inside. Give me a week. I'll give you the names of the prisoners in a week. Gus Gillis was surprised. You want to buy a batch of prisoners from there? And not just one? Tan Xiu lightly said, I don't need to travel thousands of miles to come here personally just to buy a prisoner. I want to buy a batch, and the number must not be less than 100. Impossible. Gus Gillis bluntly shouted, even if Augustino is the highest-ranking officer of Labor Camp 1319, he wouldn't dare to sell so many felons to you. Not to mention 100 people, even if there were a dozen of them, I'm afraid he wouldn't have the guts. Tan Xiu frowned and said, he doesn't have enough power? Or does someone above him control him? Given Augustino's authority, it's not a problem to sell dozens of felons, said Gus Gillis. But the crux of the problem is, the prisoners in Labor Camp 1319 are all extremely terrifying felons. Just a few of them can cause great harm to the society if they are casually released. Augustino does regard money as his life, but he's not someone who will easily court death. You mean, Augustino is afraid that if he sells too many prisoners, they will eventually cause trouble for him once they do something big outside? Asked Tan Xiu. Is that right? That's right, said Gus Gillis. Tan Xiu squinted his eyes and pondered silently. He felt that Gus Gillis's words were very reasonable. If he were the highest-ranking officer of Labor Camp 1319, he wouldn't take such a big risk for money. But if he didn't cooperate, wouldn't it be a waste of his trip? Or should he really resort to that very dangerous method, to create a riot? Secretly helping those prisoners escape? I have an idea, boss. Inside the room, Jean Sher suddenly spoke. You have an idea? Asked Tan Xiu in surprise. Tell me about it. A cold look flashed in Jean Sher's eyes as he seriously said, Augustino is doomed to not dare to sell so many prisoners to us, so it's better to secretly contact the number 2 figure of Labor Camp 1319. As long as he's willing to cooperate with us and sell a large number of prisoners to us, we'll help him get rid of Augustino. As for whether he can sit on the top seat in the prison, it's all up to his own efforts. That's right. Tan Xiu clapped and nodded with satisfaction. Your idea is really good. If the number 2 figure of Labor Camp 1319 isn't an idiot, he'll cooperate with us. Gus Gillis, who's the number 2 figure of Labor Camp 1319. Sander, answered Gus Gillis after thinking for a while. Is there a way to contact him? Asked Tan Xiu. Can we contact him and arrange a secret meeting? Asked Tan Xiu. I'm Augustino's honored guest, so Sander will give me some face. Gus Gillis nodded. Mr. Tang, if you really have the ability to satisfy Sander in terms of money and also get rid of Augustino, I'm sure Sander will agree to the deal with you. But what? Asked Tan Xiu with raised eyebrows. But can we change the deal between us? Asked Gus Gillis with all seriousness. I don't want money. I just need you to help me with something. Tell me what kind of help? Asked Tan Xiu. After your plan succeeds, I want you to help me kill 4 people, said Gus Gillis. They're powerful gang leaders in Tel Aviv. Tan Xiu didn't rush to answer Gus Gillis, but asked with a faint smile instead, if we help you kill those 4 leaders, will you have a way to become the big boss of Tel Aviv's underground forces? That's right. Gus Gillis didn't conceal it and replied with all seriousness, as long as those 4 are dead, their underlings will stir up trouble and even fight among themselves for the position of the big boss. When they fight to the death, that's the time for me to act. I'm 70 to 80% confident that I can become the big boss of the entire Tel Aviv underworld once those 4 are dead. It's a pleasure to cooperate with you. Tan Xiu nodded. Gus Gillis didn't expect that Tan Xiu would agree so readily. He immediately said with excitement, I'll have to trouble you to find a way to contact Sander. I'll inform you personally after I've determined the time and place. All right. Watching Gus Gillis leave, Tan Xiu then waved to Jean Sher and said, follow him secretly and monitor his movements. If you find him doing one thing in front of us and another behind our backs, kill him directly. Understood. Jean Sher nodded cautiously and quietly followed him. Labor Camp 1319. At the northernmost end of the prison was a 6-story building. Inside the bottommost floor was an extremely spacious hall. At this moment, there was a ring in the hall. Aside from 2 boxers in big pants fighting desperately on the ring, there were also hundreds of people sitting in the surrounding audience seats. Who do you think will win the final match, Sir Augustino? A foreign man in a suit and shiny leather shoes comfortably smoked a cigar and casually asked while puffing out a cloud of smoke. As the highest-ranking officer of Labor Camp 1319, Augustino still replied with an obsequious smile, "Mr. New Vale, Meat Grinder number 3 and Grim Reaper Sickle number 6 are very powerful experts in our prison. Meat Grinder number 3 has a record of 4 wins, while Grim Reaper Sickle number 6 also has a record of 4 wins and 1 draw. That's why I can't guess who the final winner will be when they fight." Pointing to Death Scythe, Zinvari slowly said, "I think the final winner will be that Death Scythe. He hasn't taken out the weapon he's good at up until now, and his opponent hasn't pressured him too much. As for Meat Grinder, haven't you noticed that he's very strong, but his speed is too slow?" Augustino nodded thoughtfully and said, "I think Mr. Zinvari is right. I hope he can win the best match. Otherwise, I'll lose all the money I've invested." Zinvari was an arms dealer who controlled various channels of arms trafficking in Israel and even had a very close relationship with the state. Augustino could become the highest-ranking officer of Labor Camp 1319 because Zinvari had secretly spent a lot of money to help him. Any carelessness in a fight between experts will cost you your life. Besides, the situation in a fight is ever-changing, and no one can say who will be the final winner. Zinvari nodded. Suddenly, Sander, who was sitting in the chair next to Augustino, suddenly took out his mobile phone and was a bit surprised when he saw the caller ID. It was because he found that the person who called him turned out to be Gus Gillis, the most powerful gang leader in Tel Aviv. "What does he want from me?" Although Sander didn't want to pay attention to Gus Gillis, he couldn't pretend not to see him at this time. He quickly glanced at Augustino, bent his waist, and left the auditorium. He ran to a remote place outside, picked up the phone and said, "Gus Gillis, shouldn't you take the initiative to look for Augustino? Why did you call me? Promotion and getting rich is a good thing. I wonder if you're interested in it?" Gus Gillis's voice came out of the phone. "Sorry, I don't understand what you mean," said Sander with a frown. "You don't need to understand anything else for the time being. Just remember to cooperate with me. Not only will you be promoted to become the highest-ranking officer of Labor Camp 1319, but you'll also earn a huge amount of money. I'll arrange the meeting place and time tomorrow at noon." Chapter 806. Sander held the phone in his hand, his eyes shining. He knew Gus Gillis's identity, and he didn't trust this ruthless gang leader very much. However, Gus Gillis's words still piqued his interest. Sander was indeed fond of money, but what he liked the most was the position of the highest officer of Labor Camp 1319. It was because he was well aware that as long as he could sit in the top position of the prison, it would be tantamount to a lot of money flowing into his pocket. "Go." After careful consideration, Sander gave Gus Gillis an answer. At noon the next day, in an inconspicuous cafe in a remote neighborhood of Bat-Yam, Sander met Gus Gillis, who had arrived ahead of him. After sending away the 2 trusted subordinates who had followed him for many years, Sander sat in front of Gus Gillis alone. He lit up a cigarette and asked while smoking, "Mr. Gus Gillis, I like straightforward people, and I like dealing with honest people even more. What exactly do you want from me?" "Don't worry, Warden Sander." Gus Gillis lightly smiled and said, "It's naturally a good thing that I'm looking for you. It's just that I'm not the protagonist who needs to meet you today. I'm just looking for you to act as a middleman for him." Sander slightly furrowed his brows and asked in a deep voice, "Who is he?" "It doesn't matter who he is." Gus Gillis shook his head and said, "What's important is that he can give you what you want. For example, power and money." Sander fell into silence. He was getting more and more curious. Who exactly was this person? What was his purpose in coming here? He had been prepared to encounter danger this time. Even if the other party's request was too excessive, he must agree to it for the time being. At worst, he would just leave this coffee shop and refuse to acknowledge his debt. I'm not late, am I? Tan Shio quickly arrived and spoke in fluent English. Gus Gillis immediately got up and introduced, "You're not late, Mr. Tang. Let me introduce you. This is Mr. Sander, the Deputy Warden of Labor Camp 1319. This is Mr. Tang, the protagonist who plans to cooperate with you this time." Tan Shio shook hands with Sander and then motioned him to sit. He then sat next to Gus Gillis and smilingly said, "I'm sure Warden Sander must be very curious about why I called you here. It's actually very simple. I want to make a deal with you." Sander sized up the young man in front of him. His eyes sparkled as he asked, "What deal?" Tan Shio was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he raised his arm and quickly made a gesture. Suddenly, All walked over from afar with a suitcase in his hand. When he placed the suitcase on the table, he opened it and saw a suitcase full of US dollars. "Warden Sander, here's $1 million. Whether or not we can strike a deal today, this money is yours. Consider it a gift for our first meeting." Sander's expression changed. $1 million was not a lot of money to him. His net worth was more than $10 million. However, this action of Tang Shio's gave him a trace of favorable impression. Just as he was about to speak, his gaze inadvertently swept across Mo's face. "Impossible!" Sander abruptly stood up from the sofa and stared at Mo with shock in his eyes. "I haven't seen you for many years, Warden Sander," said Mo with a faint smile. "You've recovered from your injuries? I thought the Grim Reaper liked you and would take you away." Sander glared at Mo with cold, killing intent oozing from his teeth. "You're wrong. The Grim Reaper doesn't like me, so I'm very lucky to live until now. I still remember that you stabbed my left chest with a dagger back then. If it wasn't for the position of my heart being slightly different from an ordinary person's, I'm afraid I would have died in your hands. We were also trying to survive back then, and you were our enemy," said Mo smilingly. "But now, my boss wants to make a deal with you, so we're no longer enemies. I like the saying that all the hustle and bustle in the world are for benefits, and all the hustle and bustle in the world are for benefits. There's no eternal enemy in this world, only eternal benefits. What do you think?" "What I want to know the most now is how big the benefits are," said Sander in a deep voice. Tan Shio waved to Mo, motioning him to wait at the side. Then he smilingly said, "I didn't expect Ao to have some relationship with Warden Sander. It should be said that no discord, no concord? As for how much you want to know, that will depend on your guts." Sander sat down again and asked, "Tell me more clearly." Tan Shio shook his head and said, "What I can tell you now is that as long as you're courageous enough, the currency of our deal should be in hundreds of millions, with the word US dollars added behind it." 100 million? US dollars? Sander's heartbeat sped up and the anger on his face gradually dissipated. In just 5 or 6 seconds, a smile covered his face as he said, "You're Mr. Tang, right? Tell me about the details of the cooperation." "I want to buy prisoners from Labor Camp 1319, and a lot of them," said Tan Shio. "The number of prisoners will be at least 3 digits. 100? Sander's pupils shrunk and his body couldn't help but shiver. A storm was set off inside his heart, and his eyes were full of fear when he looked at Tan Shio. It must be noted that each and every one of the prisoners in Labor Camp 1319 was a vicious and wicked person who deserved to be shot countless times. Why did this young man in front of him want to buy so many prisoners? Did he want to form a terrorist organization? Sander didn't know how to answer because he didn't dare. Money was a good thing, and hundreds of millions of dollars was an astronomical figure for him. But no matter how much money he had, he still needed to be alive to spend it. By observing Sander's expression, Tang Shio could guess what he was thinking. A smile appeared on his handsome face as he said, "Warden Sander, I know you don't dare. But what if the crime of selling prisoners doesn't affect you and instead makes you the highest-ranking officer of Labor Camp 1319? What do you think of this outcome?" Sander's eyes lit up and he asked, "Do you have a way?" "I'll send someone to kidnap Augustino before we make the deal," said Tan Shio with a smile. "You'll use his name to make the deal with me." After the deal is done, you'll immediately report to the government, and I'll send someone to evacuate with Augustino, pretending to be fleeing. If Augustino is killed in the fierce battle, the dead will eventually be unable to testify. Making Augustino the scapegoat? Countless thoughts churned in Sanders' mind, and the more he thought about it, the brighter his eyes became. After a long while, he asked his last worry, "How can I believe you really have this ability?" Augustino may regard money as his life, but he's also very concerned about his own safety. Every time he goes out, he'll bring at least several experts to protect his safety. Tan Shio pointed to him not far away and said with a faint smile, "What if I tell you that I brought a group of experts with strength similar to Ao to Batyam? Do you think you can do it?" "That bastard," Sander cursed inwardly before he finally nodded and said, "That man of yours is very powerful. I've fought him before, so I know his strength." "Then let's make a good implementation plan," said Tan Shio with a smile. Time fleeted by. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. In Labor Camp 1319, Augustino was comfortably nestled on a soft sofa, enjoying the service of a blonde beauty. In front of him, Sander was holding a file and putting it on the table. Augustino casually picked it up and glanced at it a few times. He then grabbed a pen and signed it, throwing it to Sander and said, "A total of 13 people. You're in charge of arranging all of them. Remember, figure out their situation. If you find someone who's more powerful than you, remember to tell me. I'll get it done right away." Sander nodded. Augustino stopped Sander, who was about to make a move. He opened the drawer and took out 2 stacks of bills, throwing them to Sander and saying, "Take these $20,000 and distribute them to the brothers below. Tell them to work hard. As for your bonus, I've already transferred it to your account." Sander nodded with a smile. After he turned around and left the office, his expression immediately turned gloomy. His bonus each time was only $50,000 at most. Compared to Augustino, who could get at least hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, the difference was too big. That money, is he trying to get rid of a beggar? Sander cursed inwardly. Seeing that there was no one in the corridor, he took out a pen from his pocket and quickly added a name to the list of 13 prisoners. Richard. 10 minutes later, Sander appeared in the cell where the 14 prisoners had just been sent in. He watched as all of them were obediently handcuffed to the iron bars. His eyes finally fell on Tan Shio, and then he spoke to the prison guard next to him. "Take Richard out and put him in cell number 0000018. Detain the rest in the cells in the back." Immediately, 2 prison guards unlocked Tan Shio's handcuffs and took him out of the room. One of the 13 prisoners, a young black man, shouted, "Hey, buddy, why did you specifically put him in cell number 0000018? Could it be that you have received benefits from him? How much? $10,000? Or $100,000? I also have money. I also want to go to cell number 0000018. Sander's complexion changed and he angrily shouted, "Shut the hell up, you damn black bastard. The prisoners in cell number 0000018 have been sentenced for at least 200 years. If you want to die faster, I can promise you that." Hiss. The black youth sucked in a breath of cold air and instantly became listless. Tang Shio's pace came to a halt. He turned to look at the black youth and suddenly asked, "What did you do, buddy?" The young black man puffed out his chest and cursed, "What's it got to do with you?" Tan Shio looked at Sander and asked, "Tell me about his crimes." Sander lifted the file and read, "Statanshu, Native American, burned down 16 shops and killed 9 people. Robbed a jewelry store, killed 3 people and seriously injured 4. Escaped from prison twice, respectively." Chapter 807. Listening to Subtanshu's criminal record, Tan Shio's interest was piqued. According to this guy's crimes, he would probably be sentenced to a few hundred years, right? How many years? Tan Shio interrupted Sander and asked with a faint smile. Sander glanced at Subtanshu and lightly said, "His crimes are very serious. 260 years. Tan Shio smiled and said, I think he's very interesting and suitable to stay in cell 000018. Warden, how about you make an exception and lock him up with me? Sander nodded and said, take him to cell 000018 as well. If this brat doesn't behave himself, teach him a lesson first. In a flash, the 13 people, including Subtanshu, looked at Tan Xiao with a strange expression. They couldn't figure it out. Was this guy a prisoner? Or was he the boss of this prison? This guy in front of them, whom they called the warden, actually listened to a prisoner's words? The prison guards around Sander were his confidants. Although they didn't understand why their immediate superior would listen to a prisoner, they immediately unlocked Subtanshu's handcuffs and followed behind Sander. Corridors after corridors, gates after gates. The further they went inside, the more guards there were and the tighter the lockdown became. Midway, everyone took the elevator to the 4th floor and walked along the dark corridor to the end before arriving at cell 000018. As the steel cast door was opened, Tan Xiao and Subtanshu were pushed inside. You'll live here from now on. I'll come here every day to teach you a lesson. Sander's words carried a mysterious meaning. He looked deeply at Tan Xiao and immediately ordered the prison guards to close the door and lock it from the outside. Inside the cell, there were a total of 4 prisoners. What was most inconceivable to Tan Xiao was that one of them was actually a woman. The woman had bulging muscles all over her body and an exceptionally strong physique. Her rough face had a hideous scar on the left cheek that looked like a poisonous scorpion crawling on it. The other 3. A burly middle-aged man with a tiger's back and a bear's waist. He had many tattoos on his body, especially on his bare arms, where 2/3 of them were covered in tattoos. A skinny old man with a head full of white hair, who looked like he had 1 foot in the grave, held 2 dumbbells in his hands, which were at least dozens of kilograms in weight. They were lifted and put down by him as if they were as light as a feather. The last one was a gentle young man in his mid-20s. He was wearing gold-rimmed glasses and was reading a book in the innermost corner of the cell. Even when Tan Xiao and Subtanshu were sent in, he did not raise his head or blink his eyelids. Interesting. 2 prisoners were sent to our cell 000018 at the same time. This seems to be the first time something like this has happened. The burly man sat on the bed, stroking his chin as he chuckled. Tan Xiao sized up the 4 men and finally turned to look at Subtanshu. He smilingly said, I heard that the first thing you do after entering the prison is to be sent to the cell and then be beaten by the old men inside. Judging from the looks of these 4, I'm afraid you're going to suffer some physical pain. Subtanshu angrily glared at Tan Xiao. He clenched his fists, causing his bones to crackle as he coldly said, Brat, I think I need to teach you a lesson before I get beaten up. You bastard, you're the reason why the prison sent me here. Slap. Tan Xiao raised his hand and slapped Subtanshu's face. Before the man could react, the slap sent him flying and his body smashed on the single bed a few meters away. Then, Tan Xiao unhurriedly said, I brought you here to give you a great benefit. Don't you dare spew dirty words before you figure out the reason. Else, I'll beat you until you're obedient. After saying that, he then looked at the several people who looked surprised, cupped his fists and said, I'm new here, so I'm afraid I'll have to bother you for a few days. You can call me Xiao. Won't the 4 of you introduce yourselves? The burly man looked at Tan Xiao with a solemn expression. Tan Xiao's speed in dealing with Subtanshu had shocked him secretly. He was a ruthless character who once killed a tiger with his bare hands and even fought a polar bear. Dozens of enemies had died in his hands over the past decades. He could see at a glance that this Oriental kid was an expert. Xiao? What an interesting name. You're also very powerful. If you can knock down Emily, it proves that you have the capital to make us introduce ourselves. The muscular female prisoner coldly snorted and discontentedly said, Kate, your balls retracted back into your stomach after seeing a powerful expert? You want me to fight him? Do you think it's interesting? K2 grinned and said, My balls indeed retracted back into my stomach in front of you. Emily, cut the crap and fight him. Let all of us see who can stand and talk in the end. Emily rolled her eyes and immediately looked at Tan Xiao. She hooked her finger and said indifferently, Since this coward wants to see us fight, then it's better to let me warm up. Brat, I'll never break your legs. As for your hands, it depends on my mood. Tan Xiu shook his head and indifferently said, if you want to fight, I think this old man can fight me. As for you, I think you'd better forget it. The white-haired old man revealed a faint smile and meaningfully said, do you really want to fight me, kid? Do you want to bully this old man? Tan Xiu smiled and said, bullying you is better than beating some weaklings, no? Emily seemed to be insulted. She roared and instantly pounced toward Tan Xiu. Her speed was extremely fast, almost comparable to that of a martial arts grandmaster. Her fists whistled and appeared in front of Tan Xiu in an instant. She wanted to knock down Tan Xiu with one punch. Pa! Tan Xiu reached out to grab Emily's fist. His seemingly light punch instantly blasted out and directly hit Emily's face. After she screamed, her body was smashed 6 or 7 meters away and fell next to the bed of the young man who was reading a book. The white-haired old man's pupils contracted and the smile on his face disappeared without a trace in an instant. He looked at Tan Xiu with a solemn face, took a deep breath and said, you're very strong, Xiu. I'm not your opponent, because I can't beat Emily in one move. Anyways, let me introduce myself. Old Angie, you can call me that. Old Angie? Inside Tang Xiu's mind was the information about the prison's inmates that Sander gave him. According to the information, this old Angie used to be a mercenary, a terrifying man who had lived for decades on the battlefield under the rain of bullets. It was said that the number of humans he killed was definitely more than 3 digits. It's a pity that you're too old. You're not suitable to charge and break through the enemy lines. You can only be a guard at most. Tan Xiu said something that old Angie couldn't figure out. He then looked at the young man who had never looked up and lightly said, judging from your appearance, you should be an Asian. Which country are you from? The young man looked up for the first time. His fingers pushed the frame of his glasses and then gave Tan Xiu a shy smile. Zhang Xiaohua from China. Zhang Xiaohua? His information appeared in Tan Xiu's mind. The world's top hacker once wrote the most terrifying network virus, Spider, which caused a European country's network system to be paralyzed for 4 days and indirectly caused billions of dollars in losses to that country. The information also showed that he should have a special ability, because in the only time he killed someone, he killed 29 people with his bare hands, and then when he destroyed 16 buildings, he injured more than 140 people. Can you show me your special ability, Zhang Xiaohua? Tan Xiu asked in Mandarin. Zhang Xiaohua looked suspicious. After putting down the book in his hand, he leaned against the corner and looked at Tan Xiu, asking, you're also from China? That's right. Tan Xiu nodded. Then how do you know that I have a special ability? Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. I've seen the criminal records of every one of the 1,260 people in this prison, including you, said Tang Xiu. Zhang Xiaohua stared blankly and asked with a confused expression, it's reasonable to say that the prison's criminal information is top secret. I'm afraid that only a few people can see it except for the prison's highest officer. I used the computer network to invade the prison's network system and read the prisoner's information. Are you also proficient in the network? Are you a hacker? I'm not a hacker, and I'm not proficient in the network. Tan Xiu shook his head. I think you're a talent, and it's a pity that you're staying here. Maybe I'll tell you the reason if you can get out of this prison. After saying that, seeing that Zhang Xiaohua had no intention to show his special ability, he didn't bother to pay attention to him anymore. After turning to look at Subtanshu, he sneered and said, just stay here and don't cause any trouble for me. Else, any one of these 4 can teach you a lesson. My grandma once told me that a wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Subtanshu slumped to the side and leaned against the bed leg as he spread his hands and said. Tan Xiu nodded with satisfaction. He then turned around and walked to the cell's door. He fiercely kicked it, leaving a shallow footprint. A few seconds later, 2 prison guards rushed over. One of them fiercely whipped the iron window with an electric baton and shouted, behave yourself. I want to see the prisoner on the opposite side, said Tan Xiu. What? The 2 prison guards outside the door were startled. They looked at Tan Xiu as though they were looking at a madman. Of course, it was not only the 2 prison guards, but also the original 4 prisoners in cell 000018. They looked at Tan Xiu as though they were looking at a madman. Is he courting death? The same thought emerged in everyone's mind at the same time. Because everyone in the entire prison knew that cell 000001 was on the opposite side. There was only one person inside, a guy who could be called a devil. Spectre. It had always been. No one dared to enter that cell, because those who had entered had turned into corpses. Chapter 808. Subtanshu had just been imprisoned in this prison, so he naturally did not know who was in cell 000001. Looking at the dull expressions of the prisoners, he asked loudly, "Why do you have such expressions? Do you think Xiu can't get out of here?" Old Angie glanced at him and said, "Every prisoner who is imprisoned here is like a bird with its wings cut off and a poisonous snake with its fangs broken. They have completely lost their freedom. Xiu is joking. He can't get out of cell 000018 before it's time for him to get some fresh air. Another reason is that cell 000001 is on the other side. There's only one way for anyone who goes in, and that is death. Even the prison guards are no exception." Subtanshu said incredulously, "Is there a monster on the other side?" Old Angie said, "It's not a monster, it's the devil." Tan Xiu laughed involuntarily. "To tell you the truth, I'm afraid of everything except the devil. The 2 of you, please open the cell door. I want to go to cell 000001 on the opposite side to see that demon." The 2 prison guards had received Sanders' order to allow Tan Xiu to walk around the prison. So they whispered a few words to each other. One of them took out a key, opened the cell door, and said, "If your body is thrown out of cell 000001 by the devil, we will collect your body." Tang Xiu couldn't help but smile in response. Under the dumbfounded expressions of the other prisoners in the cell, he strolled out of the door and directly entered the cell opposite him after the door was opened. Cell 000001 was very large, at least 50 square meters. There was only one bed inside, and it was a very high-end Simmons. In addition, there were all kinds of appliances inside. It was more like a small living room than a prison cell. In the cell, the ghost was lying flat on the bed with a book covering his face. It was unknown if he was asleep or not. Tan Xiu walked over, grabbed a chair, and sat down directly 2 or 3 meters away from the bed. He then crossed his legs and picked up a half-opened pack of cigarettes from the table. He took out a cigarette, lit it, and took a deep puff. As the smoke came out, he shook his head and said, "This cigarette is terrible. It's very choking." The ghost's fingers twitched, but then he calmed down again. However, the indifferent voice came from under the book. Choking smoke can let people know that they are still alive. Cherish every puff of cigarette, because no one knows if you will be able to smoke another puff after this puff. Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing. "Why do I feel like you're not the famous devil Spectre from the legends, but more like a philosopher?" Clap, Spectre lifted the book and directly threw it to the side. He then sat up and leaned against the headboard. He folded his arms and observed Tang Xiu with a faint smile. "You seem to be quite interesting, mister. At least, you're the only living person who dares to come to my place alone in the last 5 years. Now, I don't really want to kill you." Tan Xiu smiled and said, "It seems like my personal charm is very strong." Ghost's face turned cold. A gust of wind instantly shot out from the gap between his fingers. The half-pack of cigarettes that Tan Xiu had put back on the table was rolled up by the wind and appeared in his hand. Ghost lit the cigarette and took a few puffs. Then she asked, "Tell me, why did you come here?" Tan Xiu said, "To get you out of here." Spectre laughed out loud as if he had heard something extremely funny. "Interesting. That's really funny. Someone actually wants to save me." "Is there a problem?" asked Tan Xiu. Ghost looked at Tan Xiu as if he was an idiot and sneered, "Do you really think I can't get out of here if I want to?" Tan Xiu nodded and said, "According to my men, you do have the ability to escape, and it's quite easy for you to do so. I don't know why you want to stay here, but I believe that you'll be willing to leave with me and work for me in the future." Spectre squinted his eyes and suddenly waved his right arm. 3 sharp hidden weapons shot toward Tan Xiu's eyes and mouth. Tan Xiu casually raised his arm and gently flicked his fingers. 3 streams of air were released and smashed the 3 incoming airflows. Then he said with a smile, "So you're a wind attribute supernatural ability user. No wonder you have the capital to be so arrogant." Spectre's complexion slightly changed. His body flashed and his afterimages instantly appeared around Tang Xiu. Numerous wind blades emerged and the air suddenly turned a bit hot as a purplish-red flame appeared out of thin air and wrapped the wind blades. Die. The wind blades burning with purple flames blotted out the sky and rushed toward Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu fiercely punched out and an earth-shattering airwave spread out from his fist, forming a violent energy flow that bombarded the burning wind blades all over the sky. As the steel chair Tan Xiu was sitting on collapsed, Spectre's bed was also smashed, and the violent energy flow bombarded Spectre's chest. Beam! The reinforced concrete wall was smashed and a hole was made. The 2 prisoners in cell 0000002 next door looked at Spectre, dumbfounded and tongue-tied. "I didn't expect the quality of this wall to be so bad." Tan Xiu shook his head and smiled. Cough, cough. Blood spilled from the corner of Spectre's mouth. With a solemn expression, he stared at Tan Xiu and said, "Who are you? Where did you come from?" "Don't worry about where I came from." Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, "We've already appeared in front of these 2. Let me teach them a lesson first, and then I'll deal with you." Amos and Amotai, right? 2 fire attribute ability users? Amos and Amotai glanced at each other. Amos then coldly snorted and said, "Who are you?" "The law can't sentence you to death, but I can easily kill you," said Tan Xiu straightforwardly. "So, I'll give you a chance. Choose to submit to me and be loyal and devoted subordinates. I can take you away if you want. But if you don't agree, I'll torture you for a day and a night and then kill you." "Arrogant!" Amotai bellowed angrily. 2 burning fire serpents wrapped around his arms appeared, and layers of flames immediately rushed toward Tang Xiu. The 2 fire serpents shuttled back and forth in the flames, attempting to kill Tang Xiu directly. Extinguish! Tan Xiu performed a hand seal, and the fire elements in the surrounding air instantly dissipated. The flames and fire snakes also disappeared without a trace under Amotai's great change of expression. Impossible! Amotai tried his best to sense the fire elements, but to his horror he could no longer feel the slightest bit of fire elemental energy at this moment. If he couldn't feel the fire elemental energy, he wouldn't be able to use his ability. Amos also quickly sensed it, but the result was the same as Amotai's. He couldn't feel the slightest bit of fire elemental energy at all. This kind of strange situation caused him to feel horrified. He stared at Tan Xiu and sternly shouted, "How did you do it?" Tan Xiu sneered, "I can summon the energy between heaven and earth that will as long as I want to use it. If I don't want them to exist, then even you, ability users, can't use even half of it. Tell me, are you willing to submit to me?" "Impossible!" Amotai and Amos shouted in unison. Tan Xiu didn't ask any more questions. With the release of a violent aura, his figure instantly dashed in front of the 2. His lightning-like fists bombarded the 2 of them again and again. Although the 2 of them didn't have any abilities and were very strong, they were unable to fight back against Tan Xiu's attacks. "Ah!" A blood-curdling scream came from cell 0000002. All the prisoners and prison guards within 100 meters heard it clearly. However, the prison guards had received orders from their superiors not to care about what was happening here, so none of them came over. Prison monitoring room. Sander stared intently at the surveillance screen, his eyes flashing with horror. Others might not know the strength of Amos and Amotai, but he was very clear about it. Because the 2 brothers were terrifying existences second only to Spectre, they were imprisoned in cell 0000002. But these 2 terrifying guys were actually beaten by Tan Xiu until they screamed again and again, looking extremely miserable. This made him look at Tan Xiu's figure in the surveillance video as if he was looking at a monster. Warden, is this guy the devil? How can he be so powerful? A prison guard asked with a face full of shock. Sanders suddenly narrowed his eyes. He instantly pulled out a sharp knife and fiercely pierced the prison guard's heart. The two prison guards behind him suddenly killed the other two people in the monitoring room. In just a few seconds, all three prison guards in the monitoring room were killed. Call our people over. Keep a close eye on this monitoring room. No matter what happens in the surveillance video, don't let outsiders know, Sanders solemnly exhorted. Understood. The two prison guards immediately nodded. In cell 000002, Tan Xiu violently beat up Amotai and Amos for several minutes in one breath. Only after the two were riddled with scars did he stop. He kicked them to the corner and coldly asked, "Tell me, are you willing to pledge allegiance to me in the future?" The two did not answer because they were unwilling to pledge allegiance. In that case, I'll continue to beat you. Don't worry. Tan Xiu said. You have a day and a night to endure my beatings. Even if you are 2 pieces of steel, I will still beat you into steel juice. That's right, I forgot to tell you that you won't be beaten to death by me in this one day and a night, because one of my identities is a powerful doctor. As his voice faded, Tan Xiu beat them again, even using his hands and feet. A few minutes later, he kicked them to cell 000001 next door. Spectre, on the other hand, frowned as he watched Tan Xiu brutally beat up Amos and Amotai. All kinds of thoughts kept flashing in his mind. Chapter 809. Spectre never thought of himself as the world's most ferocious man. He had encountered many strong enemies during his decades as an assassin, some of which he had no choice but to flee. However, the terrifying strength of this young and handsome Oriental boy in front of him made him dread. He's too strong. Spectre was well aware of the strength of the two brothers. Even if he wanted to defeat the two brothers, it would not be easy for him to do so, let alone be as relaxed as Tan Xiu. Suddenly Tan Xiu, who was beating up Amos and Amosai, turned to look at Spectre and asked, "Don't you think it's a bit boring to only rely on punches and kicks to beat them up?" Spectre narrowed his eyes and indifferently said, "It's indeed boring." A smile appeared on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth. He raised his hands in front of his eyes with his palms facing up. Suddenly, 2 crystal-clear blue crystals appeared on his palms. The moment Amos had a bad premonition, the blue crystals were shot into their bodies by Tan Xiu. Shrill screams came out of their mouths. After their bodies turned stiff in an instant, they curled up on the ground and twitched violently. Their facial features became distorted, blue veins bulged on their foreheads, and the blood vessels all over their bodies swelled up. The heart-wrenching pain made them taste a fate worse than death for the first time. Tan Xiu turned to look at Spectre and said with a faint smile, "Now that I'm here, you must remember one thing. Those who obey me will prosper, and those who oppose me will die. It's better to go out with me than to spend the rest of your life in this dark prison." Spectre took 2 steps back. Suddenly, the solemn expression on his face turned into a smile and he said, "If my guess is correct, you should be from China, right? I've studied your country's culture and read a sentence in a book. The body is in the Chao camp, but the heart is in the Han camp. I hope I'm not wrong. But how are you going to solve this problem? Also, you're killing the chicken to warn the monkey, aren't you? Unfortunately, it doesn't work on me. Even if I can't beat you, I'm afraid you can't stop me if I want to escape." Tan Xiu took out a jade bottle with a flip of his hand and indifferently said, "You overestimate your ability. If I don't want you to escape, you won't be able to escape from my palm even if you have wings. If you don't believe me, you can try." Ghost sneered and said, "I'll give you a chance. If you can catch up with me, I can choose to leave this place with you and see the outside world." Finished. A bolt of lightning flashed in his hand. After the steel door was cut open, he dashed out like a bolt of lightning. Soul Anchor Art. Tan Xiu cast a spell, and a hazy energy instantly rushed into Ghost's back. His body, which was about to rush out of the room, suddenly froze. At the same time, Tan Xiu quickly took out 4 formation discs from his interspatial ring and quickly set up the 4 symbols formation around Spectre. "Break for me!" Spectre's face turned red as he roared angrily. As the energy in his body surged crazily, the special energy collapsed and his stiff body instantly returned to normal. While laughing wildly inwardly, he dashed out of the room. Bim! Spectre's head collided with an invisible energy shield. The huge impact caused the energy shield in front of him to ripple, and his body was violently bounced back. When his back touched the energy shield again, he was bounced back to the ground. What the hell is this? The gloating feeling in Ghost's heart was extinguished by a cold and bitter feeling. He instantly bounced up from the ground and turned to look at Tan Xiu in disbelief. "An array," replied Tan Xiu calmly. Ghost exclaimed in horror, "You're a cultivator from China? Damn it. Don't tell me a dignified cultivator has nothing better to do? What the hell are you doing in this prison?" "I can tell you since you want to know," said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. "But you'll have no leeway after you learn about it from me. You can live if you submit to me, but you'll die in pain if you defy me." Spectre clenched his fists with a conflicted look in his eyes. After a long time, he shouted, "Speak! I'm going to form an army of cultivators, so I need a lot of powerhouses who can charge and break through the enemy lines for me," said Tan Xiu lightly. "My purpose in coming to Labor Camp 1319 is to buy a large number of prisoners, which can be considered as recycling waste." "I'm not a waste," shouted Ghost angrily despite being horrified by Tan Xiu's purpose. "You're nothing but a waste in my eyes," sneered Tan Xiu. "Don't think that you're the strongest assassin in the world of assassins, not to mention that you're a dual attribute ability user. You're just like an ant in my eyes. It's as easy as flipping my hand if I want to kill you. Also, let me tell you one more thing. Some of my men who came with me this time are much stronger than you. They can easily obliterate you even if I don't do it myself." "Are they also cultivators?" asked Ghost. "Yes," answered Tan Xiu. Ghost fell into silence. The anger on his face slowly subsided as he turned to look at Amos and Amosai, who were twitching on the ground. Then he said in despair, "I can agree to follow you, but I also know that there's a saying in Huaxia that the emperor doesn't send hungry soldiers. What benefits can you give me?" The jade bottle in Tan Xiu's hand instantly entered the 4 divisions array and floated in front of Ghost. Then he slowly said, "There are 2 pills inside. Even if you take one of them, it will greatly increase your strength. Of course, you need to understand immortal cultivation techniques before taking these 2 pills. I'll teach you that cultivation technique and make you become immortal cultivators." "I can become an immortal cultivator?" Ghost stared dumbfoundedly at Tan Xiu with eyes full of disbelief. "Nothing is impossible in front of me." Tan Xiu nodded. "Once you become an immortal cultivator, with diligent cultivation and the assistance of these pills, let alone your current strength, it won't be a problem for you to be tens of thousands of times stronger than you are now." "I agree." Ghost's heart skipped a beat. Although he was a prisoner, his status in this prison was very special. Even the highest-ranking officer in the prison didn't dare to offend him. Although he was guilty, it would be very easy for him to leave this place if he wanted to. Even if he didn't want to be caught, there were only a few people in this world who could catch him. Coercion. It made him angry and unwilling. Temptation. This caused ecstasy to rise from the bottom of his heart. All these years, he didn't lack money, nor did he lack glory and splendor. If he wanted power, he could get it through his own means. If he wanted women, he could have countless of them. Now, all he wanted was to become even stronger. But now, even though he was being coerced, he was given an enormous opportunity. We also agree." Amos, who was curled up on the ground and twitching, suddenly raised his twisted face and squeezed out the words from his throat. Although Amos didn't speak, he also chose to agree inwardly. With a faint smile, Tan Xiu waved his hand and took back the 2 blue crystals. After Amos gradually calmed down, he removed the 4 divisions array trapping Ghost, turned around, and walked to a chair to sit down. Then he said, "I've read your information. I know that the three of you should be the strongest prisoners in the entire labor camp 1319. However, I want to build a cultivator legion, so I need a lot of men. I came to Tel Aviv this time, so I must take away at least 100 prisoners with good strength. 100? Do you want to raid the prison? Asked Ghost in surprise. I've always believed that there's no need to resort to force if the problem can be solved with money. Tan Xiu shook his head. Besides, my coming here is a secret, and I don't want outsiders to investigate me. So, I'll pay to buy you out. That's impossible. Ghost shook his head. Even if Augustino regards money as his life, he won't dare to sell that many prisoners at the same time. He indeed won't dare, but Gus Gillis does. Tan Xiu sneered. As long as we put the crime of selling prisoners on Augustino, not only can Gus Gillis' official position be promoted further, but he can also earn a sky-high fortune. Is this your arrangement? Asked Ghost with squinted eyes. That's right. Tan Xiu nodded. As far as I know, there's an ability user around Augustino. Ghost shook his head. He's very strong. Though he's a bit worse than me, many people are not his match. If you want to kill Augustino, you must kill that guy first. Since I've chosen to follow you, then I'll deal with the ability user around Augustino. Since he's a tough guy to deal with, then I'll send 2 people to help you. Tan Xiu said indifferently. The next thing I need to do is to stay in the prison and secretly select prisoners worthy of my purchase. If you 3 have any suggestions, you can tell me. All right. The Ghost nodded. The 2 brothers, Amos and Amos, exchanged glances and nodded at the same time. They had just endured inhuman torture and their internal injuries were not light. Hence, they were self-aware and didn't mention anything about helping Augustino deal with the ability user around him. Tan Xiu took out 2 holy healing pills and threw them to the 2 brothers, saying, "Take it and your injuries will recover in a short time. Also, you 2 brothers will each take a medicinal pill. You can take it after you learn an immortal cultivation technique from me in the future." "Thank you, call me boss from today onward," said Tan Xiu. "Thank you, boss." The 2 brothers replied again. Tan Xiu smiled indifferently. He didn't feel at ease subduing them like this, so he ordered them not to resist and cast a forbidden technique in their bodies, completely controlling their lives. At this moment, in the nearby cells, hundreds of prisoners heard the strange sounds coming from cell 000001. Although many of them were secretly surprised that someone had provoked the demon in cell 000001, no one dared to come out to take a look. However, the 5 people in cell 000018 on the opposite side knew that it was Tan Xiu who entered. What shocked them was that the scream just now didn't come from Tan Xiu's mouth, but rather, the 2 brothers in cell 000002. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.